Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by PrizePicks. Got a nice 11 game slate here, so it should be a really fun one. And who better to help break down each game than Adam, should my money share? Adam, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty well. Looking forward to this slate. I think it's going to be one where either I win a lot of money or I lose a lot of money because I think that there's just like a lot of really good plays. There's a lot of concentrated ownership in kind of questionable spots. So I like slates like that. I'm looking forward to talking about this one and then playing it after.
Nice, man. I gotta tip my hat to the Ricky Bobby strategy of if you're not first, you're last. So yeah, this is a good one. I mean, two really big injuries with Evan Mobley out for the Cavs and then Luka Doncic out for the Mavs. So I'm kind of wondering, is this like going to revolve around those two injury situations?
I think to some extent, but to me, there's still question marks in both of those games, especially the Cleveland game. I think that there's a lot of ownership going to players there, and it makes sense because you are missing key pieces in Mobley and then obviously in Luka. But there's just so many good similar plays on this slate that I'm not entirely sure all the ownership is warranted.
Yeah, that's true. I guess some of the guys filling minutes like might not be the most reliable. Like I don't know if it's taco time,
Yeah.
but before we get into the slate, guys, if you could hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe to get all of our DFS content. And Adam, I gotta ask you one question here, man. I've been getting some comments in the chat being like, "This guy is really boring. Like I'm falling asleep listening to the show." So I was like, I gotta step up my game. So I put on a funny hat. How do you do it, man?
How do what?
How do you like keep like not come across as boring? How can I step up my game and keep the show more entertaining?
I just get to talk a lot less and sound more entertaining when I do it because I have to say fewer words. There's a reason I don't host.
I see. Okay. Well, I'll try to fill with a lot of comedy here. Guys, hit the thumbs up so we can get some positive feedback here. And thanks, Aiden, for the super chat. He said, great show yesterday. I took down the 222 for 10K in the late night slate. Congrats, Aiden. That's a pretty big score. So hopefully we can keep the train going here. He gives a shout out to Adam Laffy, and he says Josh Engelman is okay too. So
That's the nicest thing I've seen anybody in chat say about Josh.
yeah, just watched Josh's interview with Blender, and it was really good. He was saying how Josh was saying how he doesn't think about the trolls. It's hard to do, but um let's get into the slate here. So we got 11 games. First game, we got Washington at Charlotte. So everyone has been kind of on the Spencer Dinwiddie train, but now that you got Bradley Beal back, that's going to really impede a lot of the fancy production here. So on the Wizards, who are you looking at tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think Beal coming back makes this a pretty difficult team to get to. Beal, it's a good matchup for sure against Charlotte, but I just think that Beal coming back, you have a situation where Dinwiddie's priced up a bit from Beal's absence. Kuzma's priced up a little bit. Beal himself is priced up. He's not on a minutes limit. He wasn't out with any sort of injury. He was out because his grandmother passed away. So I'm expecting him to play his normal minutes, but it's just difficult to really prioritize any of these guys, I think, given the elevated pricing, given the fact that now Beal is coming back and he's going to cut into Dinwiddie's workload. He's going to cut into Kuzma's usage a little bit. I think, outside of just sort of last piece in type guys in tournaments, it's pretty tough to get to much here. I think the center position is kind of interesting with a cheap Daniel Gafford, but even that, he's typically on the short end of the minute split with Montrezl Harrell. Even if he plays around 24 minutes, there's always opportunity cost at center. So it just makes it really difficult to really love anything from Washington.
Yeah, you mentioned opportunity costs. On an 11 game slate, the 7 p.m. games sometimes can be a little bit risky to take players from, but how do you see the late swap shaping up tonight?
So I think most of the stuff we're waiting on is in semi-early games, like 7:30, 8 o'clock games. So I'm hoping we have that news beforehand. There is, potentially Damian Lillard getting ruled out in the last game of the night, but I don't think I can do a whole lot with that since, for now, I'm assuming he's going to play. There's not a whole lot there. Like if I if I put in, Anthony Simons, then I don't have much to swap to if Lillard does play. So I'm anticipating we get most of the news that we're waiting for before lock. I hope that's the case. But otherwise, I'll just be around my computer to late swap by 8.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Alex Caruso. He's in the 10 p.m. game. You could swap from Caruso to Simons maybe. But yeah, it's hard to project Lillard to not play because he did play the last one. So it'd be a little unusual if he didn't play, then played, then didn't play. But just a guess on my part there. Okay, on the Charlotte side, LaMelo Ball has really been playing a lot more minutes, and that's coincided with Ish Smith being out of the rotation completely. So let's start there. Well, his price is 10.7K on DraftKings, which is insane. You can't pay 10.7K, can you?
I don't think so. Like that's a hell of a price tag. He's much more reasonable on FanDuel, I think. He obviously has a very high ceiling. His playing time has increased recently. All that's good. But this isn't the same Washington team either. Maybe if this was, Scott Brooks Wizards, you could make a case for LaMelo in a really fast-paced game against a terrible defense. Washington's in the middle of the pack in pace this year. They're top 5 in defensive rating. They're just not the same team that they have been in the past. And that's an extremely aggressive price tag on him. The guard spots are loaded today as well. There's a very, very strong mid-range with guards that, offer you 40, 50 fantasy point upside. So it's not taking anything away from LaMelo. It's just, I have a really difficult time paying that price tag and thinking that it's going to put me in a good position.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you basically need like a triple double or something, which he's capable of on a good night, but that's a lot to ask. And man, on FanDuel at 9K, that's more where I think he should be. Like maybe he's a decent play on FanDuel. But even at 9K, I'm not that excited. Although I mean, he's a up and coming player, I guess. Anyway, let's look at the rest of the Hornets here. Okay, so I'm not really seeing a ton. You got Gordon Hayward probable. Miles Bridges been really good this year, but as you were saying, the matchup isn't as good versus the Wizards as it was in previous years. So do you see much here?
Not anything I'm prioritizing. I think in terms of just, contrarian pieces to round out a lineup, I have some interest in Bridges. He is playing huge minutes. He's continued to produce at a high rate, even with Terry Rozier back. I thought there was a chance that you would see Bridges drop off a little bit, but really you've just seen Gordon Hayward take a hit in usage. He has just shy of a 20% usage rate since Rozier came back. Bridges is still at about 23%. He's playing huge minutes. So not a priority, but, a last piece in type guy. And then I still don't mind taking shots at Kelly Oubre in tournaments. We've seen Ish Smith essentially be phased out of Charlotte's rotation. That opens up more minutes for Oubre when he's playing well. Last game, he picked up 3,000 the first half. Then he was ejected in the second half. So you basically just got a throwaway game from Oubre. But when he's playing well, he can be in the closing lineup here at 4,600 and no ownership. So again, not a key piece for me, but someone where if I have, a chalkier lineup and need someone in this price range that isn't owned, Oubre, I think, does have a nice ceiling.
Definitely. Now, next game, Indiana at Detroit could be a little bit more interesting. You got Chris Duarte questionable. He missed the last one, which Justin Holiday got the start. But I don't really have a lean on whether or not he'll play. Hopefully, we get that news before lock. But do you think that's going to be an important injury situation, or is he just kind of not a high enough impact player that it really makes a difference?
Yeah, at this point, I don't think it really matters because you'll get more minutes for Justin Holiday, potentially more minutes for some combination of Torrey Craig, Keelan Martin. You saw Goga Batadze in the rotation last game, but I don't think any of that really matters that much because none of the guys getting a bump in minutes, specifically Justin Holiday, are very productive fantasy options. And Duarte doesn't do a whole lot of anything when he's on the floor now that LeVert's back. So, it's not like taking Duarte out of the lineup is going to give a bunch more usage to Brogdon or LeVert because they're not deferring to Duarte anyway. So I don't really think it changes a whole lot here.
Now, LeVert has been interesting because I thought they were going to ramp up his minutes kind of coming off this injury situation, but they've kept him steady around like the high 20s on a given night, or maybe 30 if you're lucky. So is that just not enough minutes for playing him?
Yeah, the minutes are the concern. On the other hand, would think that as the season goes on, you start seeing him play more minutes. And we've already seen that he physically can in the games that Brogdon missed. So it does make him kind of interesting in tournaments. Again, it's just like a high upside contrarian piece because he leads the team in usage rate in the 3 games that him, Sabonis, and Brogdon have played together. And it wouldn't be surprising if you just like start getting, the random 35, 36-minute games, even though you can't project that. So not a piece I'm getting to a lot, but I do think that he still has a ceiling at his price tag.
Definitely. One of my favorite bets recently has been the Sabonis under on assists. So last year he had a 28% assist rate. This year is at 16.6%. So the line has been steady at 4.5, but I keep getting the under in all my parlays and all my bet cards. So have you looked into those props at all? And how do you feel about that 4.5 line?
No, I haven't, but it was 4.5 assists.
4.5 assists for Sabonis, yeah.
I think it's slightly under. Like his assist numbers have been down this year, pretty much regardless of who he's playing with. But then having Brogdon and LeVert in there has taken a toll as well. So I'd take the under there.
Definitely, yeah. He's averaged 3.9, and some of those games were without Brogdon, without LeVert. So that's been a pretty stable option. We have that at a 35% projected ROI on Odd Shopper. So make sure to check out our free player props tool. A lot of fun. Especially on today's slate, you can get like a 11 leg parlay going, and I've been trying to hit those, but you gotta get lucky. Miles Turner has been someone that it seems like he's pretty volatile, has a lot of upside for the price, but you mentioned center is always a little bit tougher to commit to players. How do you feel about Turner?
Yeah, the ceiling's there, but the price tag also I think is pretty much where it should be. You've been getting 31 to 32 minutes from him in competitive games. It's a good spot here against Detroit, but it's just still like when you look at the center position today, obviously we haven't talked about most of the games, but on DraftKings, you have DeAndre Ayton for $600 less expensive. It's really difficult to prioritize Turner over him. You have Christian Wood for $800 more, $900 more. I don't know. I can't do math, but either way, you have a guy in Wood that I think looks better and is going to be more of a priority. You have Towns at the top. So, and then there's plenty of cheap guys. So it's still, he's fine. I think if he lands in some lineups, that's okay. But there's just options that are bigger priorities for me.
On the Detroit side, I think Cade Cunningham is probably going to be the guy that people are excited about. He played a lot of minutes in the last game, and he had a really good fantasy performance, his best yet. Got like 50 fantasy points about. Now, I wonder how that's going to translate into the ownership today, but he's 6K on DraftKings at FanDuel, so for a guy that does a little bit of everything, that seems like a reasonable price. How are you evaluating Cade Cunningham today?
Yeah, I think Cunningham's still a good play. I was really happy to see the minutes that he got last game because what we had pretty much had with him was Detroit said that he was no longer on any sort of restriction. He played 32 minutes. Then he was in foul trouble in back-to-back games, but still managed to play between 30 and 31 minutes. If you looked at his rotations, it suggested that in games where he wasn't in foul trouble, he was likely to play a ton of minutes. And then last game, he played 36 minutes despite losing out to garbage time. So he sat a total of like 3 or 4 minutes in the first half of that game. So it appears that the Pistons are willing to run him out there for a ton of minutes in competitive games. Obviously, there's always blowout risk when Detroit plays, but I think this is a situation where his salary is still reflective of, the 30 minutes or so per game that he's played to this point. When going forward, I think there's an extremely good chance that he's averaging several minutes more than that per game. He's got about a 26% usage rate this year, 10% rebounding percentage, 21.5% assist percentage. So like you said, he does a little bit of everything when he's out there. We haven't, last game, he obviously was really, really good, but for the most part, we haven't seen great shooting from him this year. And he's still been able to produce, solid per minute fantasy numbers. The only kind of concern I have with Cunningham is that it is a loaded price range. There's several $6,500 guards on DraftKings that look very good. So I think that it's difficult to just, grab Cunningham and say, oh, he's the best out of the group. But I certainly think he's, one of the pieces in that group that looks very good.
Yeah, this one is head versus heart for me. I mean, my heart's telling me Cade Cunningham is got a huge upside, but then the head, our projections has him at about 30 points for 6K. So That's pretty neutral. If I feel like the field's gonna want to play him, maybe that's a spot where I kind of gamble on a fade, but I don't feel great about that. Shout
Yeah,
out
I
to
think a
Man.
lot of it for me with Cunningham is just going to kind of come down to where do the ownership projections end up on the whole group of like Dennis Schroeder, Cunningham, Rubio, Lonzo Ball, these guys that I think all have a very similar range of outcomes.
Definitely. Shout out to Manny C. Thanks for the super chat. He says, is producer Jordan Klein at the controls? Either way, here's one for the producer. That's our boy Tyler Zander today. So thanks, Tyler, for doing all the production. Now the rest of Detroit, I'd say Sadiq Bey and Jeremy Grant are always somewhat intriguing, but Isaiah Stewart with no Kelly Olynyk in the lineup seems like he has some good minutes upside compared to an average night. However, that hasn't materialized except in 1 out of 3 of the games he started the past with Kelly Olynyk out. So how do you feel about taking a shot on Beef Stew tonight?
I think that the upsides there. The issue, as usual, is the opportunity cost. He got about 28 minutes last game. You saw one game, I think he played about 32 minutes. So it's mostly, can he just stay out of foul trouble? If he can, the minutes should be there. But he's still about a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy, which is good. But when you're talking about using up a center spot, that's a position where typically you can get a lot better per minute production. So I think Stewart's fine, but I think there's a lot of guys I like a little bit more.
Yeah, not the most exciting option. I agree. New Orleans at Miami. This one, a lot of questionable players on the Miami side, but for New Orleans, Brandon Ingram has kind of worked himself back into a full minutes load, it looks like. Well, anyway, I don't think it's going to matter a ton because his price is pretty high, and I don't think he really deserves that kind of tag. But since he does a little bit of scoring and assists, you got to feel like it's going to negatively impact some of the guys we've been going to with Devontae Graham and Nikhil Alexander-Walker. So I'm not seeing a ton on the Pelicans. Maybe some Josh Hart. What do you see?
Yeah, I think this is one of the least appealing teams for me because Ingram coming back, he's a high usage guy. He's got a 32.5% usage rate this year. He has a 25.5% assist percentage, and he's got a 9.5% rebounding percentage. So, not an elite rebounder, but does some rebounding, gets a lot of assists, shoots a lot. You've had Jonas Valanciunas really be the DFS star from this team this year, but his production drops off a bit with Ingram. He still averaged 1.23 DraftKings points per minute in the games that Ingram has played, but his price tag just keeps going up. He's up to 9,500. That is a pretty fair price tag if Ingram is out. But now you have this difficult matchup at Miami. You have Ingram in, where Valanciunas has about a 21% usage rate compared to between 25 and 26% when he's out. Still a 20% rebounding percentage, but that's still a point or two lower than when Ingram is out. Assist percentage drops several points as well. So it makes it really difficult to get there. Ingram played 32 minutes last game. I think it's reasonable to think that he maybe plays a couple more here, but he's still expensive. And then he's taking shots away from guys like Alexander Walker and Devontae Graham as well. I think the most appealing piece from New Orleans, and it's still not a particularly appealing piece to me, but I think it's Josh Hart at 5,200 just because he has the potential to play a lot of minutes. He's not a high usage guy anyway. So someone coming back like Ingram doesn't have a huge impact there. Hart's a good rebounder. He gets, some assists. He scores enough. So still not a priority for me, but I think that he's kind of the least negatively impacted by Ingram.
On the Miami side, Jimmy Butler is questionable, but he had been on the court on Monday, like practicing a bit. So I'm kind of not as thinking as much he's going to be out today. Meanwhile, Bam Adebayo was kind of a surprise scratch from the lineup on Monday. He's questionable again today. And then the backup, Dwayne Dedman, is also questionable. So really, we have no idea what's going to happen in Miami tonight. How would you approach this?
Yeah, so I have the guys in for now, but I'm kind of just waiting and hoping, we get this news. It is a 7:30 game. Typically, Miami's been pretty transparent with their injuries this year. Even last game when Bam Adebayo went from probable to out within a matter of like 20 minutes, it was still well ahead of lock. They kind of just, were like, oh, by the way, he's questionable. By the way, he's not going to play. It wasn't like they did what we see teams do sometimes where he was probable all day. And then like, as they're warming up, they were like, oh, he's out. So we've seen them be pretty transparent. Most teams have been this year. I think that's been an emphasis from the league. So I'm hoping that we get clarity early enough that it's not really going to matter. If we don't, I'll project everybody in and just be ready to late swap, I guess. Either way, I think Bam ends up looking like a good option if he plays. If Butler is out, then Bam obviously looks better from a production standpoint. But Josh and I kind of talked about it this morning. From an edge standpoint, I almost think it's better for Bam if Butler plays, because if he's out, everyone's just going to jam Adebayo into their lineups and he's going to be a great play. If Butler is in, Adebayo isn't going to project quite as well, but he's still going to be a really good option at 8,200. So I kind of just hope everybody's in and I can just play Bam at lower ownership. Nice.
Yeah, I think some of these prices have kind of adjusted for Butler being out. So you have Herro at 7,500 and 7,400, and Lowry is even more than that. So if Butler is out, I don't see it making a huge difference, but Bam Adebayo would be pretty interesting. If Bam is out, Dedmon, kind of disappointed the other night, but he got 28 minutes at that at his fantasy point a minute kind of production, or a little bit better than that. That'd be pretty appealing, I'd say. So that's one to look out for, guys. Before we get to the next game, I gotta mention that in addition to all this content on YouTube, we have a lot on the website, awesomeo.com. A lot of tools you can add to your arsenal, like projections, ownership, lineup builder, fantasy cruncher add-on. Hit us up in Discord, all that for $29.95 a week for every sport, or you can get the NBA package for $16.95, or we have our budget option for $5, which is a partial membership for Awesemo Plus with all the showdown single game content and the lineup builder for regular slates. And we have this promo code right now, Coach K. It gives you your first week of college basketball projections for $5. So if you want to branch out and do NBA and college basketball, use that promo code Coach K. So make sure to check that out. Next game, we got Boston at Atlanta. Boston has Robert Williams out tonight. So starting lineup is going to be a little bit different today. This is one I've been kind of trying to puzzle over because, okay, so Grant Williams, I guess, is probably going to start at the 4 and Al Horford at the 5. Is that kind of what you're anticipating?
Yeah, I'm anticipating Smart, Schroeder, Tatum, Grant Williams, Horford.
The one question I have is Aaron Nesmith started the second half when Robert Williams missed the second half last game. So I'm keeping an eye out for that. I don't think it really matters for DFS, but Aaron Nesmith is 3K. So if he did start, would he be appealing to you?
Probably not. Like I think regardless of who starts between Nesmith and Grant Williams, Josh Richardson's like the 3K guy on the Celtics side want to go to if I go to any of them.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising that he's 3K because he's been getting pretty good minutes. Now, with Robert Williams out, that opens up some minutes at center. So what do you see them doing with the centers? Do you see Enes Kanter getting in the rotation, or do they play small? What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of a tricky one. Enes Kanter did play 8 minutes in the second half last game after Robert Williams got hurt. But thinking about what the Hawks typically do with their backup center, you have Capella typically play around 34 minutes. Gorgie Jang plays 5-6 minutes, and then you have John Collins. So I think it's reasonable to think that maybe Kanter plays around 8 minutes again. And then you get, so like, let's say Horford plays 32, 33 minutes. Kanter plays like 8, and then the rest go to a smaller lineup. So I'm not expecting Kanter to play enough minutes to really be viable in DFS, even though he is a good DFS producer when he's on the floor.
Yeah, that one's tricky. If we had some reason to believe he'd get the full backup run to Horford, he'd be pretty appealing, but a little bit risky there. Now, Richardson played 25 minutes last game, closing the game. So you mentioned that he's around 3K. How does he stack up among the value options tonight for you? Yeah,
like he's still not somebody that I think is super exciting, but he's around a 0.75 fantasy point per minute guy in these games without Jalen Brown. He's only projected for 3% ownership on DraftKings. I kind of mentioned at the top of the show that I thought there was some like weirdly concentrated ownership tonight on plays that are good, but that I don't think are drastically better than some others. This is one example. Richardson at 3% ownership when you have guys like Dean Wade, we haven't talked about Cleveland yet, but Dean Wade pulling like 16% ownership, Patty Mills pulling like 12% ownership. I think Josh Richardson has a very, very similar range of outcome to those guys, even if he's going to play a few less minutes. So I do like Richardson in tournaments as long as the ownership's low. I'm not like anchoring myself to Josh Richardson saying he's, a great play regardless. It's just, I think he's very similar to the cheap guys that a lot of other people are using. So I like using Richardson as long as the ownership stays where it is.
Definitely. Yeah, he seems like a pretty good value option. And I know there's some good value options, but I don't think any are quite that cheap. So he does fill a need there. On the Atlanta side, we have Bogdanovich, questionable. Kevin Herter is also questionable, but he did miss some time in the last game due to injury. So to me, that's a little bit more questionable, if there is such a thing. So do you see the injury situation in Atlanta being relevant tonight?
Possibly. So my guess is that Bogdanovich plays and Herter doesn't, just based on the fact that Bogdanovich finished out the last game and Herter missed the entire second half. But if you were to get Herter and Bogdanovich out, there's a good chance that you're getting increased minutes for some combination or both of Gallinari and Cam Reddish, who are both really, really cheap and both certainly capable of producing at a high rate when given the minutes. If just Herter is out and Bogdanovich is in, from what we've seen in the past, it's likely that Solomon Hill would start. So you would still get Herter's absence would still lead to an increased ceiling for guys like Gallinari and Reddish, but they would be riskier, assuming that they're both coming off the bench. It still ends up being more of a hot hand situation. And Solomon Hill potentially cuts into their minutes as well. So if both of these guys are out, it becomes just kind of wide open value in Atlanta. If only Herter is out, then you can still go to Gallinari and Reddish. It just becomes riskier. If Herter and Bogdanovich are both in, Herter himself at 4K looks like a good value option.
Nice. Yeah, I think Herter is kind of appealing if he does play tonight. It's a little bit tough to lock that in if we don't know before lock, but this is this a 7:30 game anyway? We probably should know before lock if he plays or not. Any interest in John Collins or Capella or Trae Young here?
Young, I think, is pretty difficult to get to. Clearly, he's the top fantasy producer on the team, but the opportunity cost at that guard spot is just so high. Like I said earlier, you have Cunningham, you have Schroeder on the other side of this game, who I think looks great. You have Rubio, you have all these guys in the mid 6K range. So I think it's gonna be tough to get to Young. I'm more interested in guys like Capella and Collins. Capella's been playing really big minutes in most games recently, getting 33 or 34 minutes in most games. So I think he looks good. Collins, I like more against small front courts because he gets those center minutes. He gets more center minutes. Capella plays less. Here, I'm expecting those 33 or 34 minutes for Capella, but at 7,300, there is still a ceiling for Collins, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I think Collins and Capella, especially interesting on FanDuel where they're a little bit cheaper. Now, let's go to Orlando at New York. New York is like 11.5 point favorite here, which it really shows how far the Knicks have come, but also that Orlando not very good this year. However, I mean, they got some talented young guys. Mo Bamba has been kind of a high upside option at center, and then Jalen Suggs can't hit any shots, but if he ever does, he could easily crack a winning lineup at his price. So is anyone on the Magic appealing to you tonight?
Yeah, I mean, nobody really stands out here. This is a team that's running a deep rotation. They have just a lot of interchangeable pieces, but I do agree with you. Jalen Suggs, who is questionable if he plays, you've only been seeing around 26 minutes from him recently, but we haven't seen what happens when he actually scores the basketball because he hasn't done that yet in his NBA career, really. So I just have a hard time believing that, like, if Jalen Suggs is playing well, especially if Orlando's actually hanging in the game because Suggs is playing well, I have a hard time thinking Orlando is still just like, yeah, okay, Gary Harris, get in there over Suggs at the end of the game. So I think he still has a path to 30 minutes if he's playing well. He's really cheap. He's not going to get much ownership here. And if he was getting ownership, I would get away pretty quickly. But if he plays, I do think the ceiling he offers is pretty nice. Wendell Carter Jr., certainly capable of putting up a big score at 6,700. Cole Anthony, we know, has a massive ceiling, and he would get a little bit of a bump if Suggs is out because it opens up more usage and more assists for Anthony. But there's nothing other than just contrarian, one-off type pieces from Orlando for me.
Yeah, agreed. A lot of cheap guys like Franz Wagner and Terrence Ross, but it's hard to get too excited about Terrence Ross in fantasy. On the New York side, I mean, you got a full ship here aside from Nerlens Noel being out. So one guy that's really gotten a price decrease is Mitchell Robinson. He's only 3,800, and I mean, he did not play as much in the last game compared to Taj Gibson, which was a little bit surprising, but I feel like he's got a lot of upside because of his blocks, especially. So does that price tag stand out to you?
Sorry, the price tag for
Mitchell Robinson at
yeah,
3,800.
I was gonna say 3,800 for Robinson. I think is really interesting because actually I think the Knicks as a whole are really interesting because this is a team where it's extremely difficult to confidently project them for a lot of minutes based on just how the bench has been playing really really well. So you've been seeing them take minutes from the starters. Tibbs has been willing to go there, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen in every game. If the starters play well, they can stay out there. And 3,800 for Mitchell Robinson against an Orlando team that is not very good. Like they're going to miss a lot of shots. There's going to be a lot of rebound opportunities here. If he runs in the 26, 27 minutes, which he can play, there's a good chance that he just destroys that price tag. And so I think he's interesting. And I think the same sort of case can be made for RJ Barrett, Kemba Walker, Derrick Rose. None of them look that good in terms of medium projections because you just can't confidently give any of them 30 minutes. But we know when Derrick Rose plays well, he can go play 28 or 30 minutes. We know when Kemba's playing well, he'll stay out there for the extra rotation. We know RJ Barrett, the same thing. So this is a situation where I think you can get these guys. I mean, this team has a 111 implied total. They're playing the third least efficient defense in basketball, and there's no ownership going to this team, even though every single player except Julius Randle is $5,500 or less. I think it's just a situation where this is like an example of why it's important to have some mechanism in your lineup building process to go beyond just medium projections and get guys that account for range of outcome and get guys that can put up slate winning scores. Because I think even though none of these guys look like priorities, I think that there's like a handful of guys from this team that are capable of being very, very useful tournament pieces tonight.
I know the C word is kind of a dirty word in NBA DFS, but are you suggesting correlating some of these starters or bench players because if the unit performs well, they'll all get more minutes?
I think that's one way to do it. The one, I guess, negative to that would be Orlando sucks. And so like if Kemba Walker goes off, yeah, RJ Barrett might play more minutes, but if they both go off, they're probably still not playing full minutes because the game is over. But I do think, I mean, for sure, you want to be setting rules. Like you don't want Kemba and Rose together. You don't want Quickly and Fournier together. You don't want Burks and Barrett together. You don't want Robinson and Gibson together, even though all of those guys are viable options on their own, I think.
Nice. Got a question in chat from Big Money NJ. Thanks for the super chat. He says, is there a percentage owned number that you use as a baseline to fade players? So I think the best tool to answer that is our boom bust tool, where we kind of give our percentage chance that a player is going to be successful on a slate. You can compare that to the ownership. So let's pull up Mitchell Robinson as an example here. So we have him at 2% ownership. But our data is saying there's a 24% chance that he gets 5x plus 10 value and a 5% chance he cracks the optimal lineup. So not a great example for exactly what you're asking, but hopefully that logic would be applicable. So make sure to check out the boom bust tool. All right, a lot of the guys in New York are pretty cheap, so I don't mind getting some exposure there. Next game, Lakers at Milwaukee. The Lakers, LeBron continues to be out, but Talon Horton-Tucker he's back in the lineup and he's been paying off his salary big time. It's gone up a little bit to 4,800 on DraftKings and 5,200 on FanDuel. Are you going to keep riding the hot hand with Talon Horton-Tucker?
I think he's a good value here. I also think that people might be overvaluing him a little bit based on ownership projections. Right now, we have him projected to be the second highest owned guy on DraftKings at 29%. I agree he's a good play. My concern here is that you still have Russell Westbrook. You still have Anthony Davis. Davis missed basically the last quarter and change of the last game after he was ejected. But if you look at Horton Tucker, last year, what I did was I went back and looked at what he did with LeBron on the floor, which obviously LeBron's not playing tonight, but we know that Horton Tucker is playing essentially all of his minutes alongside Russell Westbrook. And so I wanted to see sort of what he had done playing with another ball dominant guy. And he was around a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy with LeBron. He has a 21.5% usage rate so far this year with Westbrook. So he produces well, 0.8, 0.85 fantasy points per minute, I think is very reasonable to expect. But there's still kind of a question mark in exactly how many minutes is he going to play. He played 37 last game, but he also got a bunch of garbage time. He had played about 15 or 16 minutes in the first half, I believe. He played 27 minutes in his first start. I think it's reasonable to think he plays like 32 minutes here, 0.8, 0.85 fantasy points per minute on average. That's a good value, but it's still someone that's projecting, somewhere in the 25 to 30 fantasy point range, which is good for his salary, but it's also extremely replaceable on a slate of this size. And if you go to some other players that are lower owned, you get the upside of what happens if Horton Tucker fails, which he certainly can. And 30% of the field just, has this $4,800 play that didn't do anything. So I think Horton Tucker is a good play. I understand why the ownership's there. I assume I'll probably have him in cash, but this is one example of where I just think that ownership is concentrating way too much around the guy that, his median projection is good, but there's a lot of alternatives.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if you're comparing him to like a Jalen Brunson without Luka, like obviously if they're similarly owned, I'm going to lean towards Jalen Brunson, but
Yep.
THT seems like a great option in isolation. It's just a matter of if you're going for some of these very chalky plays, can you put it together with the right pieces? So
yeah,
I think that
he's someone that I would love to get if I already have a couple of contrarian pieces. Like, I have one of those Knicks guys that we talked about. I have, I don't know, but a Knicks guy plus like a couple other lower owned pieces. Then give me Horton Tucker because he does project to be arguably the best play in his price range. But I'm just not that concerned about getting away from him in lineups where I have other chalky pieces.
So the one question mark with the Lakers today is, are they going to change their lineup to match up with Giannis Antetokounmpo on the other side? So do you think they're going to keep starting the same guys with Avery Bradley and Carmelo? Like it seems like starting Carmelo versus Giannis is a tough matchup. What do you think?
I mean, I assume they'll have Davis on Giannis. I don't know that like putting DeAndre Jordan out there is going to solve your problems either. So I'm assuming they go with the same lineup. And then like Melo on Portis, I guess, Davis on Giannis. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be shocking, but I don't think they really have an answer outside of potentially Davis for Giannis anyway. So it's kind of just like rearranging deck chairs, I think.
Well, that's definitely true. Now, aside from THC, is there anyone else on the Lakers you're interested in fantasy?
Not really. Davis and Westbrook obviously are guys that if they get in your lineup, they're fine, but I'm not going out of my way to get to them. They're pretty expensive. I think that there's just better options that I like. I do think that, and on a slate this big, it's not, a huge deal, but if you were like hand building a lineup and just looking for some way to like leverage against Horton Tucker, Malik Monk is 4K. He's been playing big minutes as well. And he's certainly somebody that is capable of getting hot and taking a bunch of shots. So he's, someone that isn't going to be as popular as Horton Tucker, and nor should he be, but he also has a pretty nice ceiling at 4K.
Nice. On the Milwaukee side, Chris Middleton is back. I think he was on the COVID list, if I recall correctly. So I think that although he didn't have any lower body injury, that would really get him on a minutes limit. Maybe they'll work him back a little bit. So I think Chris Middleton being back tonight does impact the usage and assists of Giannis and Drew Holiday. So I'm kind of knocking them down a little bit tonight in our projections. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm assuming Middleton doesn't play full minutes, but I'm still assuming he's out there for 28, 30 minutes, something like that. And that's going to cut into their rates. Going back to last year in the games that all three guys have been healthy, there's only been two of them this year, but going back to last year, 21.3% usage rate, 24.8% assist percentage for Holiday, 32.3% usage rate, 28.5% assist percentage for Giannis. Still productive, still good, but not the same level as, when Middleton's not out there.
Okay, so that's kind of leading me to thinking the Bucks aren't like especially interesting for fantasy tonight, but Bobby Portis does seem to be maybe an exception that you get to because he's not a guy that gets there on unassisted usage or rebounds. So any interest in Portis?
Not really. His price tags come up a bit too. I still think he probably plays about 30 minutes and like he's capable of doing well, but that's just not a price tag I really want to pay.
Guys, if you haven't checked out our sponsor PrizePicks, they have daily prop-based contests. Essentially, you just kind of choose 2 to 5 props from a variety of sports, but certainly NBA has a lot of options, and you get different amounts of payout based on how many you get right. You use the promo code Awesemo for $100 first match deposit bonus. If you get all 5 right, you can get up to 10x of your entry fee, and they have a ton of different sports. So prizepicks.com. Now, looking at props today, just in general and on PrizePicks, are there any players that you're under or over on?
I'm trying to. I was trying to see it on the screen, but we had hockey up. I like the over on points for Brogdon. I didn't talk about him a lot when we talked about Indiana, just because the pricing is not great, but he's still getting usage even with LeVert back. He's still playing huge minutes, and I really like that matchup against Detroit.
Nice. One I'll go with Sabonis, the assists. I really think he does take a big hit with the return of Brogdon and LeVert. They have the line at 4 on PrizePicks, so that's interesting because most props are like 0.5, so you can't like chop. But I feel pretty confident that he'll get 4 or fewer, so I think that your odds are pretty good on that one. So make sure to check out PrizePicks, the promo code Awesemo, $100 bonus there. And you can use our player props tool to help, and just our projections in general to help find the lines to bet on. The Cleveland at Brooklyn. Cleveland's a 10-point dog, but they do have Evan Mobley out. On the other hand, Kevin Love is returning. I think he was another guy that was on the COVID list, if I recall correctly, but that's calling into question like what is the starting lineup going to be tonight for the Cavs? Is it going to be Love with him starting at center, or is it going to be Osman perhaps with Dean Wade at center? What are you seeing here?
My guess is Osman with Dean Wade at center and then Love backing up and playing like 20 minutes or so. He could start, I guess, but rotation wise, I think it would make more sense for him to come off the bench.
All right, we just got Bam Adebayo ruled out. Jimmy Butler is in. So Dwayne Dedman, I just am plugging in the numbers into our model here. It looks like KZ Okpala kind of got the backup minutes, which was interesting, but you gotta think Dwayne Dedman.
Lowry's out.
Lowry's out too. Dang, rest. What? So that means Tyler Herro is going to get a lot of minutes tonight as well, but his price is up, and the usage is probably not going to be as good as if Butler's out. But I think Dedman, I know he busted last time, but I feel like he might be a guy you can just go right back to and lock in almost. What do you think?
Yeah, I think going back to Dedman makes a lot of sense here. We saw 29 and a half minutes last time. That's more important to me than really anything else. We know from years of playing time that Dedman's close to a fantasy point per minute guy. So even though his salary came up a little bit, I still think he looks like a very good option here.
Now, what about PJ Tucker?
No. He was actually in like my best lineup Monday night, and I'm just watching it. I sent it to Josh. I was like, this is such a miserable experience.
Oh man. All right. So I just came up with the final numbers here. I'm uploading them. Looks like Herro we have for 40 points at 7.5K. So that's about 3 plus 5X. That's appealing. Max Strus, I don't feel great about that, but he's 3,200. But the rest of the guys, I guess Jimmy Butler at 9,400 is kind of interesting. Duncan Robinson, I don't think really benefits at all because he's only a 3-point shooter. So really Dedman and Herro for me. What do you think?
Yeah, Dedman and Herro, I think, are the two main ones. Robinson, I think, benefits in the sense that his minutes are more solidified, but I agree with you. It's not like he's he doesn't play the same role as the guys that are out. He's not going to go out there and create. He's going to just take 3-pointers. But, more minutes is still nice. And I agree on Max Strus potentially playing more minutes. He played 22 minutes last game. Just another cheap guy that you can mix in if you're playing a bunch of lineups. Not somebody I'm going out of my way to get to. I assume that Vincent gets some run. I assume that Keelan Martin gets some run as well. I think the two main beneficiaries, though, are Herro and Jimmy Butler.
Definitely. All right, let's go back to Cleveland. So if Dean Wade does get the start at center, how does that make you feel about Dean Wade? Because I know like a lot of times he's not a very good fantasy producer, so he's a little bit tough to get to even when he does start. But you gotta think that this is a different situation.
Yeah, kinda. I think Wade's a good point per dollar value. He's 3,200. I think there's a good chance that you're getting like 34 to 36 minutes here. I don't think that's a guarantee, but I think there's a good chance. His rebound percentage does jump a couple points in the minutes that he's played without Mobley, Markkanen, or Jared Allen this year. So I think that he's likely to be a little bit more productive here. The issue I have is he's still virtually a no usage guy, and he's still assuming Rubio starts. Garland is going to start. Those guys are still going to dominate usage. So in the minutes he's played with Ricky Rubio on the floor this year, he's averaging like 0.27 DraftKings points per minute. I have no confidence in his offensive game here. I think that you're just hoping he's on the floor long enough to run into enough stats to justify that price tag, which I think is fine. The issue, though, is we haven't projected for 15% ownership. We haven't projected as like a top 15 owned guy on this slate. I'm pretty willing to just not win tonight if Dean Wade actually scores enough raw points that I have to have him to win. I don't think I'm taking a really big risk by just going elsewhere.
Well, I don't mind winning then if you're not going to. But okay, we got the news. Dedmon is in. He was questionable. Now, I do think Dean Wade is being 3,200. There's not really any guys that I feel more comfortable with at that price. So I feel like sometimes these low price guys are better than they look because you can kind of stack the rest of your lineup. Now, DraftKings in particular has been really upping the salary of the high price guys, which makes that strategy not as good. So I'm trying to reconcile those two facts. But there's some other good options on the Cavs. Isaac Okoro has been playing a lot of minutes, and I don't know if he's taken any sophomore leap, but he was a high draft pick last year. And then you have Cedi Osman potentially picking up a start here. So do you think that Osman will start, and how does that make you feel about him in fantasy?
Yeah, I'm guessing Osman starts, and it does make me like him at 4K. I think basically if he comes off the bench, I think he still has a path to 30 plus minutes. But if he starts, I just feel better about that being the case. He's averaged a little over 0.9 fantasy points per minute when he's played with Rubio this year. He's not a super high usage guy, but he's still around 19 to 20%. But he also can rebound a bit. He can get some assists. Neither one, in huge margins, but or huge quantities, but he does enough when he's out there that I think at 4K he looks pretty good. And I agree, Okoro looks fine as well. He's getting less ownership than Dean Wade. I don't mind getting there. But yeah, Chetty's my favorite out of the value guys on Cleveland.
Now Ricky Rubio he got the start last game, which was kind of out of nowhere, but he's a really high per minute player, and he got the minutes last game. So I'm inclined to go back there tonight. He started off really slow, but then picked it up and ended up with like 40. So I think people will be pretty optimistic about him today as well. How do you feel about Rubio?
I feel good about him. I also just think that he's the highest owned guy in that. And obviously this will change now that we have Bam out and Lowry out. But as of right now, we haven't projected to be like the highest owned guard in that price range, where I think there's a lot of similar guys. So I think Rubio looks very good. He's been an excellent fantasy producer this year. He played 37 minutes last game. I don't necessarily think he plays that many minutes tonight. He had a really weird second half rotation where he played almost like the last 15 minutes or something. But even if he's going to get like 34, 35 minutes, he's been well over a fantasy point per minute guy. When he shares the floor with Darius Garland, he's been the one dominating. He gets more usage. He gets more assists. So it hasn't been a situation where he loses production moving into the starting lineup. Garland's been the one that actually loses some production. But it's also not a great matchup against the Nets. They've been a solid defensive team this year. I really just think the range of outcomes for Rubio, Dennis Schroeder, Lonzo, Cunningham is really, really similar. And right now we have Rubio getting like twice the ownership of any of those other guys. So it's just another example of, I think he's a good play. I don't think he's as good a play as right now. He's to warrant the ownership he's currently projected for.
That hurts to hear because I'm really thinking about going back to Rubio. But he's going to be popular tonight, so I understand. We did get the news that Duarte is out tonight. Now, we had kind of explained earlier that probably doesn't make a huge impact on the slate. Is that still your general feeling?
Yeah, and now it's even more so because we've gotten more value opening up since we talked about that.
Okay, cool. Goga Bitadze played a lot in the last game. He got all the backup center run. That probably won't happen, right? Because Detroit's backup center, like a lot of times they've been going small.
Yeah, that's my assumption, is that like maybe Goga soaks up some minutes, but just to kind of alleviate the pressure on some of these guys having to play a lot more. But I'm not expecting him to get all of the backup minutes here.
Okay. He did last game, so not the craziest play, but I generally don't go for those guys where the playing time is uncertain. All right. On the Brooklyn side, they pulled all their starters pretty early last night because they're down 20. A little disappointing if you had Harden or Durant, but it clearly is to keep them fresh for this back-to-back. However, Bruce Brown and Patty Mills, Bruce Brown had a huge game. Patty Mills was kind of the chalk last night, and he got the minutes, but the production was just kind of, whatever. But he's 3,500 tonight on DraftKings. Bruce Brown's 4K. So, are those your top options from Brooklyn?
I guess so. Yeah. I'm still not super confident in them. I have a hard time figuring out what to make out of this Brooklyn rotation because they ran an insanely tight rotation yesterday. LaMarcus Aldridge didn't play at all in the first half. You had Patty Mills on pace to play like 40 minutes. I don't think that happens again, but if it does, I don't really want to miss out on 40 minutes of Patty Mills. Even though he's not a great fantasy producer, he's around 0.7 fantasy points per minute, but he's still really cheap. I think he's a good point per dollar value. My only issue with him does come back to what you were just saying when we talked about Dean Wade, not to totally compare him to Wade because he is a better fantasy option, but the really expensive pricing on the top tier guys on DraftKings also makes these really inexpensive or these good point per dollar, relatively low ceiling values a little bit less appealing because it's not as easy to just plug like one of them in and then get to a star. So that is, I think, a little bit of an issue from a roster construction standpoint, but Mills still, I think, is a good point per dollar option just because he played huge minutes in the second half. The game Harris missed. He played huge minutes up until garbage time yesterday. I have no real reason to think he's not playing big minutes again tonight. Same goes for Bruce Brown. He produced at a ridiculous level last night that we shouldn't expect to happen again, but it's still likely that you get mid-30s in minutes from him at 4K.
Chat is buzzing about BK now. I'm like, is that Burger King? Is that Brandon Knight? There's no NBA player BK currently, right? Is that just Brooklyn?
Yeah, I think they're going for Brooklyn because I saw somebody ask if we were concerned about the blowout, so I'm guessing they meant Brooklyn.
Oh, nice. Well, we gotta be concerned after last night, but if your team blows out the other team, I mean, just look at Curry last night. It was blowout. He got like 60 points, so. Not generally something I'm super worried about.
It's a bigger issue for Cleveland. And, again, it's not that I am expecting it to happen, but I guess just kind of going back to like what I was saying about Rubio's ownership versus some of those other guys, Rubio can play well on a per minute basis. And one way that he still just doesn't justify that ownership is Brooklyn does just take care of business and Rubio plays 28 minutes instead of 36.
All right, we're up against it. We got 4 games, 20 minutes. Sacramento at Minnesota. Sacramento fully healthy. I guess the main guy that people have been interested in has been Chimezie Metu. He's been getting the start ever since Mo Harkless was benched, and he had a good fantasy game last time. Really cheap again. Is he your go-to option on the Kings?
Yeah, he's one of my favorite cheap values. I think he's a much better play on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel because on FanDuel he's a center. But this is someone where, we've talked about a lot of these cheap guys that aren't very good fantasy per minute guys. That's not the case with Metu. Since last year with De'Aaron Fox on the floor, he's averaged more than 0.8 DraftKings points per minute. He's produced at an even higher rate in his 2 starts so far this year. He played 24 and a half minutes in his first start. He played more than 30 minutes last time out. He's looked good. He's still cheap. This is a very appealing game. Like when we talk about Cleveland, they have a tough matchup against Brooklyn. Here you have what should be a fast-paced game with 2 pretty bad defenses in Sacramento and Minnesota. I think Metu is one of the better sub 4K guys tonight.
Nice. I'll throw out a shout out to Tyrese Halliburton as well at 5,900 on DraftKings. That's pretty appealing for the minutes there. On the Minnesota side, Naz Reid is back today. Towns is a great fantasy player, but his price of 10K seems to incorporate that. Anthony Edwards, a little bit better priced at 8,100 on DraftKings and FanDuel. It's been a 36-minute a night guy this season. So how do you feel about Edwards?
I really like a lot of pieces here. Is Reed confirmed back?
Yeah, he's leaning towards playing. Yeah. Like if a guy of his status can decide himself.
Yeah. So anyway, I think this is a really, really interesting team because I love this game. I think that there's just a lot of fantasy upside here. Towns at 10-4 looks good. Obviously he's expensive, but D'Angelo Russell's still underpriced. He's playing 34, 35 minutes in competitive games. He's averaging about 1.08 DraftKings points per minute this year. He's still priced to play 30 or 31 minutes. So I like him. I think Edwards, who is playing 37, 38 minutes in competitive games, he has about a 30% usage rate in the games that Russell has played. He's only 8,100. So it looks like a good spot for him. But then you even get some value with Patrick Beverley, who he played about 33, 34 minutes last game. In the 2 previous games, he hadn't played at all in the fourth quarter because of garbage time. But that last game kind of reiterated that he's playing starter minutes. He's averaging about 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. So basically the same level of production that you get from Patty Mills on average, but in a much better game environment. So I think he looks like a good value, but there's also kind of some sneaky like 3K guys here, I think, that are very risky. They're not cash guys, but they do offer some upside in tournaments. We've had Jared Vanderbilt be starting. He's only 3,400. He's not a bad per minute fantasy producer. He just deals with foul trouble a lot, but we've seen so many minutes spread out between him and McDaniels that if he's able to stay out of foul trouble, I think he could play more minutes than people are expecting here. And then DraftKings only because he's $1,400 more expensive on FanDuel, but Naz Reid has actually played a little bit alongside Karl Anthony Towns recently. Reed's a very, very good per minute guy. The only reason he's not a better fantasy option is he plays behind Towns, but they've been playing him alongside Towns a little bit recently. Now you have this Kings front court that has Metu and Holmes. They also brought Marvin Bagley back into the rotation last game. Don't know if Bagley stays in or not, but this is potentially a spot where you could get a little bit of Reed alongside Towns. If Reed plays 16 minutes at 3K and no ownership, I think that's interesting to me.
Word on the street was they played Bagley because Detroit is interested. So
yeah, that was Josh's take this morning too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Jared Vanderbilt's really cheap. That's an interesting play. And D'Angelo Russell also a little bit underpriced tonight. So there's some options here. Houston at OKC. Houston actually only a 3-point dog here, so that's surprising. Kevin Porter missed shoot around, so not expecting him to play, but he's technically questionable. That's elevating DJ Augustine to good value because he's only 3K on DraftKings, 3,500 on FanDuel. So if Kevin Porter does miss tonight's game, how do you feel about Augustine?
I think he's fine. My concern is that even going back to last year when he's played alongside Christian Wood without any of, Porter or Wall or Harden, he's still been like a 0.6 fantasy point per minute guy. He hasn't done a ton, but he's 3K flat. I think it's likely that if Porter is out, you're getting 26 or 28 minutes from Augustine. So he'd be reasonable, and he's going to just naturally be lower owned if we don't get that Kevin Porter news before lock. So he's okay in tournaments. Not a huge priority for me, though, just because I still don't expect him to do a ton.
What's your confidence level that he would start? Because Jalen Green, say that again?
Not very high.
Not very high. So this could be a good late swap option if he is confirmed starting. This is a 7 p.m. game, or 8 p.m. Eastern. So we could have a lot of roster spots open for this one. Now, Jalen Green, Eric Gordon could see a bump in minutes, but it feels like team isn't really prioritizing him because he's kind of the vet. Is there anyone else on Houston that you're interested in? It looks like Christian Wood's price has fallen precipitously.
Yeah, I like Christian Wood a lot. He benefits if Porter's out as well. He's been about a 1.1 DraftKings point per minute guy overall this year, but over 1.2 DraftKings points per minute when he's played without Porter. Usage rate jumps to 26%. He'd look really, really good here at the declining price tag. And then Jalen Green, another one of the rookies that's been costing me money this year, but he's only 4,800. This is a game that's likely to be competitive between two bad teams. If Porter is out, there's more usage, more ball handling available for Jalen Green. So I like getting to Wood. I like getting to Green. Tate's fine, but Green and Wood are the priorities for me.
Nice. How are you going to play this one? Because Kevin Porter is technically questionable. Do you usually assume that someone's out if they miss shoot around?
Yeah, like normally if it's just questionable with no other news, I assume they're in. But if they miss shoot around, and so this case, I'm assuming Porter is out.
Okay, cool. That's kind of what I was thinking. All right, guys. We have an avatar contest, aka Awesemo Hall of Fame, that we run every day. Make sure to go to awesemo.com/avatar to download the avatar. And then if you finish top 3 in a contest with 5,000 people or more, that means you qualify and you can win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So we got Billy. He said, took down 3rd place in the mini max thanks to the amazing Awesemo tools. Thank you guys for everything you do. Congrats, Billy, aka Banistopoulos. So that's a pretty hard thing to do, finish 3rd in the mini max. We got Landon. He says, I credit all my DFS success to the guys at Awesemo.com. Thank you for your hard work. Before I started using your advice, I was barely min cashing. Looks like he had a lineup that had all fire guys. So I assume that did pretty well, although it's cropped out. Here's the screenshots. Lando 84. He finished first in one contest for 2K and he got 3rd in 2. So pretty nice lineups. They're all different. So congrats to Lando. We got Sean, aka Sean Zahn. He does a lot of work behind the scenes and he's done some of our pro videos on the site. He tied for first in the Millionaire Maker on Monday. Unfortunately, he's still waiting for his $956,000, 429. T.O. Deck, man, I was blown away by this one because he tweeted us on Sunday that he finished first on the FanDuel Showdown NFL and he won 20K. And then I'm looking at the results that same night that he tweeted us and he finished first again for 13K. So he said that he had never had a 5-figure score. He had 2 in 2 days. So major props to T.O. Deck going back to back. All right, so make sure to go to awesemo.com/avatar if you want to participate in the Hall of Fame here. Chicago at Portland. These are our late games, so start a couple hours after the previous ones. So the late swap is going to be interesting. Chicago, Javonte Green is questionable. He got benched in favor of Caruso a couple of games ago. So not really a fantasy option, but could open up some rotation minutes there. Who, if anyone, are you looking at Chicago tonight?
To some extent, all of the starters. I think, Levine and DeRozan, we know, give you a high ceiling, just increased usage with Vucevic being out. They're both playing a lot of minutes in competitive games. Lonzo Ball coming off of a game where he shot extremely well from 3 against the Lakers. Not expecting him to replicate that, but he's still 6,500 playing big minutes. Still gives you a nice ceiling at a little bit lower ownership than somebody like Rubio. Caruso played 34.5 minutes. He scored 0 actual points. I don't expect that to be the case again. He's not going to be a high usage guy playing alongside DeRozan and Levine, but he's still, a 0.75, 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy playing 34 minutes or so. And then Tony Bradley is interesting to me because I think he's pretty volatile. He hasn't played very well so far this season in his starts in place of Vooch, but in the past, he's been close to a fantasy point per minute guy in games he has started for other teams. His playing time has been all over the place, and I think it could go either way in this game because Portland hasn't really been dead set on playing Nurkic a lot of minutes. Last game, for example, they only played him 18. But we know there's other games where Nurk does play 26, 27 minutes. I think Bradley's playing time is likely to depend on how much Portland plays Nurkic. So you potentially have a $3,300 Tony Bradley playing 26 to 28 minutes here. You also potentially have him playing like 16. So it's not safe. But with Dedmon, for example, getting the start now, he's deservedly going to get tons of ownership, but it's going to take a lot of ownership away from Tony Bradley. And so I think that Bradley's kind of interesting at 3,300 to me.
All right, G Mega in chat said, did you cover OKC? I skipped over them. We'll get to that in a second here. So thank you, G Mega. Kobe White came back and barely played, so it seems like they don't really care that he's back. But that could be potential in the future to shake things up, although not today, probably. Yeah, I like Bradley. That makes a lot of sense. He's really cheap, and on DraftKings, where you get 2 centers potentially, could be a great option. And then Caruso, a solid value. He's been getting a big minutes bump in the starting lineup. On OKC, they got a great matchup versus Houston. So it's looking like a lot of their guys are positive values. Pretty much everyone except Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who at 8,700 is a little bit pricey, but you got Giddey, Dort, Baisley, and Robinson Earl all kind of favorably priced tonight on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Giddey at 5,300 is dirt cheap. So he might be a chalk play on there that you can go to. Who are you looking at on OKC?
Yeah, Giddey's FanDuel price tag is pretty insane. 6,200 on DraftKings is solid as well. Baisley's price looks pretty good. Dort's price looks pretty good. Saw somebody in chat mention that Dort could have like 5 steals tonight. Definitely could be a nice spot to be on Dort for defensive stats. My only issue with OKC is, I think it's a good matchup, but they played 12 guys in the first half last game, and you're just getting pretty flat rotations where, like, even in competitive games, Gilgeous-Alexander plays 35 or 36 minutes, and everybody else plays like 30 to 32. So it's really tough to like fall in love with rostering any of these guys, even though they are cheap. I think they have nice ceilings, but I also just, on a slate this big where there's a lot of guys that are going to play 35, 36 minutes, it's hard for me to really like going to mid-range guys that I can't count on to play more than 30.
Thank you, Jordan, for the super chat. Jordan Lockhart. He's been on he's had some huge takedowns in this past month. He says, thanks as always. Been a great year with Awesemo. Need to find a way back to the winner's circle. It's gotta be tough because he won like every day for a week. So you can't pull that off even if you're really good. So hopefully we'll get back there tonight. All right, let's go to OKC. I think like pretty much everyone on DraftKings is in play. So let's go to Portland. Damian Lillard is questionable for this one, as well as Norman Powell. Lillard, I'm kind of wondering if he just is carrying over this questionable tag because he was questionable last game as well and played, but a little bit tough to decipher. Powell, on the other hand, he has a sprained ankle, and it's pretty hard to know with that injury one way or the other. I saw some people talking about how if Powell misses, then they'd want to play Nas Little. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, if Powell's out, I think Nas Little looks good. He's only 3,700. I would expect him to slide into the starting lineup. He's played well when given opportunities this year, so I think that you'd expect him to get more minutes. The sneaky value piece that potentially could play more too is Anthony Simons. When you have Chicago running lineups that have Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, and Zach LaVine next to each other, there's no real reason that Portland can't counter with lineups that have Simons, Lillard, and McCollum on the floor at the same time.
Nice. Yeah, so McCollum, he's kind of a nice price at 8K on DraftKings and 7.8K on FanDuel. One thing you could consider is just kind of bumping his projection up a little bit. If you end up getting him with Lillard in, that's not the end of the world. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Then Simons, if Lillard's out, that would be a great play as well. So really, if you have a few guys from these late games, you could have a combo that no one else has. So that's like a viable strategy tonight. Dallas at Phoenix. Dallas is definitely one of the teams to target tonight. I mean, it all seems to be one guy, though, Jalen Brunson. He's dominated earlier in the season when Kristaps Porzingis was out. But now with Luka out, there's just a long history of him getting huge minutes and playing really well as far as per minute stats. So is there any reason why you wouldn't have Jalen Brunson in your lineup tonight?
No, Brunson's one of the few very popular guys that I actually really like tonight, despite the ownership. I just think he kind of stands out. Like, there's nobody at his price point that I think is really comparable. He's been a better player this year in general than he has in the past. And then when he's played without Luka on the floor, he's been well over a fantasy point per minute. It's likely he plays, he's been playing 29, 30 minutes anyway. It's likely he gets into the low to mid 30s here. The only concern is, Dallas does only have like a 102 implied total. They're 9-point dogs at Phoenix. There's some risk that they just get destroyed and you miss out on minutes. But other than that, I don't have anything negative to say about Brunson. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate, regardless of ownership, I think.
Porzingis had a huge game the last game when Luka was in, so I think people will be interested at his price tag of 7,400 and going back to him. I don't know how much he's really impacted by Luka being out, because he does score a lot of assisted buckets. So I'm not thinking necessarily he's going to pick up a ton of slack there. What are your instincts about Porzingis here?
I think his usage rate should go up a bit. He's played 58 minutes without Doncic this year. He's got a 30.7% usage rate. Since last year, he averaged about 1.22 DraftKings points per minute without Luka on the floor, if I remember correctly. I'm pulling that back up now. 1.2, 28.9% usage rate. So I think he is better without Luka. Not like, I don't think that Luka being out has the same sort of impact on Porzingis that it does on Brunson, but I do think it's a bump for Porzingis. Most importantly, though, on DraftKings, even if Luka was in, I would think Porzingis was a really good play here because he's still really cheap. His playing time's been up lately. On FanDuel, he's priced for Luka to be out and maybe a little bit overpriced, but I still think he's a really good option on DraftKings.
Definitely. Is there anyone else on the Mavs that you're looking at tonight?
Hardaway Jr. is the third piece. He's 5,300. He's done virtually nothing from a fantasy standpoint this year. He only has an 18% usage rate, but when you think about who is in the lineup for Dallas, Luka's usage isn't going to Dwight Powell. It's not going to Dorian Finney-Smith. Brunson will get some. Porzingis will get some, but there's still plenty left over for Tim Hardaway to get some more shots up here at 5,300.
Yeah, I like that. On Phoenix, the full ship today. So Frank Kaminsky is out, but that doesn't matter now that Aiden's back. Aiden is dirt cheap on DraftKings at 6,200. However, the coach said he played him too many minutes in this past game. So I think he probably gets his 30 or whatever, and that makes him a good value. So how do you feel about Aiden? Center, there's a lot of good options tonight.
Yeah, there's a lot of good options. I think he's underpriced on DraftKings, though. I'm with you. Like, even if he plays 30 minutes, that's going to be a good salary. I also just believe that NBA coaches lie out of habit and that they enjoy it. Before the last game, he said that he's not on a minutes limit, but he's not going to play his normal minutes. And then he played one of his highest totals of the year. So even if he, takes a few minutes off and goes back to 30 minutes, he's going to look good here. And I don't think it's any guarantee that he takes a few minutes off either. So I do still like Aiden quite a bit.
Nice. Any other Suns that you're interested in fantasy?
Pricing on everybody else looks pretty correct, if not expensive.
Agreed. Yeah, so this slate should be a pretty interesting one. We got a good mix of really solid chalk options and some contrarian pieces that maybe you can mix in. That's kind of the magic formula. Is I always say you go 2/3 chalk, 1/3 kind of contrarian. So hopefully that'll give us a great chance to cash and a good chance to finish on top tonight. Thanks PrizePicks for sponsoring the show. Good luck to all you guys. And we got an hour and a half coming up. We got Greg and Matt Savoca taking you all the way up to lock and then talking some PrizePicks. So stay tuned and good luck.
is the Awesemo NBA Live Before Lock, sponsored by PrizePicks. Greg Ehrenberg here, once again joined by Matt Savoca. It's going well. We keep bringing him back onto shows, at least until Eric comes back. Then there's going to be a fight, and whoever wins that fight between Matt, Eric, and Sean V, they will forever claim the second seed on NBA Live Before Lock. We've got a big one, 11 games, a whole bunch of players have gotten ruled out, and most likely we're still going to get players that are going to get ruled out or stuff that's going to happen as we go on the show. Damian Lillard, he is still listed as questionable to play. That is the biggest piece of news. However, Norman Powell, he is questionable. Kevin Porter Jr., he's officially questionable, although it appears he's a little more likely to sit than play. He's currently projected for 0 minutes and 0 fantasy points over at Awesemo in our projections. Bogdan Bogdanovic, he's questionable. Kevin Herter, he's questionable to play. So the way these shows usually go, we try to talk about position by position, but it just ends up being there's a new news item that happens every 5 minutes, and that kind of dictates the pace of the show. Matt, how are you feeling about your first big NBA show here?
Yeah. This is a normal NFL main slate size, so I'm used to the size of the games. Excited to dig into it. Already a lot of injury news, as you laid out here, but I'm thrilled to get into it. And man, we saw the chat going crazy for Live Before Lock last night. Imagine what they would be doing for the cage match between me, Eric, and Sean B to see who actually would have the analyst supremacy for Live Before Lock. I can't even imagine what the likes on that video would be.
Yeah, hey, listen, and this is what the people, we think the people are here for DFS analysis, but as you found out the other day, sometimes not always the case. But let's jump in right away. I just want to get your takes on some of the most recent injury news, the two things that occurred during the deeper dive, but also a little bit of time for at least me to digest it, unpack the news that is Kyle Lowry unexpectedly ruled out. Jimmy Butler, who was listed as questionable, he is going to play. Bam Adebayo, he was ruled out. The other one, Chris Duarte, he was ruled out. Let's start with the Heat here, because I think this is the biggest news on the slate outside of the Luka Doncic one, but that's something everybody's known about all day. Now that we know the Miami Heat are going to have Jimmy Butler, they're not going to have Kyle Lowry, they're not going to have Bam Adebayo. Who is standing out to you for Miami?
Well, of course, you got to look at Dwayne Dedmon, who has basically been a point per minute player. And so we can project him for significantly more minutes, somewhere probably in the 25 to 28 range for his minutes projection. And then, he just has to have his normal efficiency here. And I think you could play Jimmy Butler as well. It's not my favorite ceiling option. I don't have a ton of him, but he's definitely viable. And then I think you got to look at Tyler Herro, who on both sites looks like a pretty solid projection here. I'm going to be getting to plenty of these players, especially Dedmon. If you look at our boom bust tool, I mean, obviously, I think as we get up closer to lock, we're going to see these ownership projections continue to update here. But right now, he has an insane leverage score, particularly on DraftKings. All three of those players that I mentioned have positive leverage scores right now on FanDuel as well.
All right. So as you were talking, the ownership updated. Like I said, the news always changes here. Nothing ever remains static. You're saying one thing, and then the ownership comes out and it's something else.
I love
it. So here are the Miami Heat guys. Current projections on them with our most recent run of ownership, starting with DraftKings. Then I'll bring up FanDuel after. So on DK, the most popular Miami Heat players, Dwayne Dedmon currently projected for 50.1% ownership. Jimmy Butler, 31.6%. Then we've got Tyler Herro coming in at 26.5%. Those three, I think, are the real core guys that we're mostly going to be focused on when it comes to Miami. That's on DK. Now, over on FanDuel, Jimmy Butler projected for 34.4% ownership. Tyler Herro, 27.4%. Dwayne Dedmon, 69.7% ownership. The field, everybody's going to play Dwayne Dedmon at only $3,700 over on FanDuel. So now that I've given you those ownership updates on DK and FanDuel, does that all seem reasonable to you, or do you think anybody's a little bit too high?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could go away from Dedmon in tournaments if that's going to be the case. Obviously, we'll see how this final ownership projection comes in, but I still would rather have a player with a ceiling projection a little bit higher than that. Obviously, from a point per minute standpoint and a salary-based expectation standpoint, 3,700 on FanDuel, he's going to probably smash that. But I still think that if there's that many people on a mediocre player that essentially is just getting that minutes boost, I might be able to move away from him in tournaments tonight.
All right. So now we've gotten the ownership on all those guys, and all three of them play those three guys in cash. No second thoughts. Yeah. You're playing Jimmy Butler, Dwayne Dedmon, and Tyler Herro, all three cash game staples. In tournaments, Is there anybody you look at on the Miami Heat roster as a potential pivot or leverage play off of it's? I think it's kind of hard. Jimmy Butler's nobody who exists because he's just in a price tier of his own. Kind of same goes for Tyler Herro, also in a price tier of his own on Miami. But in terms of Dwayne Dedmon, is there any big man you would look at Miami and say, oh, that guy makes sense as a leverage or pivot option?
I really don't know at this point. Do we look at, I'm trying to see here where my next best Miami player is? The short answer is I really don't think so. Maybe you could look at, I don't know, Duncan Robinson. We're going to play Duncan Robinson's got to get hot, but I don't really think so. I think I'd probably just go look at another game.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, I'm looking more from a standpoint. All right, what happens if Dwayne Dedmon gets in foul trouble? And I guess there's more PJ Tucker minutes at center. Don't care. Not getting exposure to PJ Tucker today. Are they going to play, Omer Yurtseven off the bench for extended minutes? Perhaps. But once again, a big slate. There's a lot of options. I don't think that's a place I'm going to be going to. So for me, once again, cash plays. Jimmy Butler, Tyler Herro, Dwayne Dedmon. I'm going to be getting to all three in tournaments as well. Duncan Robinson, also viable. A little bit lower of a priority play because this price point has come up. Let's go over to the Indiana Pacers part of the equation now. Chris Duarte, he was ruled out slightly before we started the show. And as a result, for me, the guy that I'm getting to more of now is Malcolm Brogdon, somebody who earlier in the day I didn't really have all that much interest in, but now Brogdon, favorable matchup for him against the Detroit Pistons. I think we could expect the ball is going to be in his hands more, also potential for a little bit more minutes. Last game, without Duarte in the mix, we saw 37 and a half minutes out of Malcolm Brogdon, 22 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. He also had a usage rating of nearly 30%. So Malcolm Brogdon, reasonably priced. I like getting to him on FanDuel and DraftKings, not as a high priority play, but somebody who wasn't going to be in my player pool that is now as a result of the Duarte news. Anybody maybe from a value standpoint that stands out to you from the Pacers, or cheap guys not all that interesting here?
Yeah, the cheap guys aren't super interesting. You could definitely play some Karis LeVert. He's popping in some of my lineups on FanDuel, although the leverage score right now, if I'm got the most recent, isn't that exciting. And I have a little bit of Miles Turner as well. Again, 11-game slate, not super important here, but also on DK, he's got a positive leverage score as well with our most recent update as well. So I'm definitely going to have him a little bit more than I was expecting. And Brogdon did come up in my latest crunch as well.
All right, so let's go position by position for as long as we can. And then ultimately what's going to happen is, we're going to start talking. Guys are most likely to get ruled out, and then we'll have to pick up on that news. But for now, let's start talking about the guards and some of the players that we're getting the most exposure to. And, it's been a minute since I've talked about this guy, but somebody who I know that our listeners know I have a little bit of affinity for, Cade Cunningham. A couple of reasons I like Cade Cunningham here. Number one, I've been bullish on him in his rookie season from a fantasy standpoint basically all year. And the results have been spotty. The ceilings have been really high, though, particularly last game, 51 and a half fantasy points. But beyond me just liking Cade Cunningham, there's another reason I like getting to him. The Heat defense should be worse off with no Kyle Lowry and no Bam Adebayo in the picture. The other thing to consider, too, if I'm getting a lot of exposure to the Miami Heat, I like the added correlation I get by having a bring back option on the other side in the Detroit game, something I generally don't concern myself too much with in NBA, but this is a particular standpoint, a particular situation where I just think the matchup gets a lot better for Cade Cunningham with all the injuries to Miami. Do you have any particular take here on Cade Cunningham? Are you getting to him in your lineups?
Some Cade Cunningham. I am getting to about actually under the field on FanDuel, I realize, but I do understand the argument for him. I do have some of him. Again, it's one of those things where the minutes projection for a player like Cunningham is so solid compared to so many others, whether it's a blowout or a close matchup.
Oh, by the way, I just realized I have to go back. I just realized I messed something up. Detroit is not playing against Miami. I don't know why.
The Pelicans, right?
Yeah, they're playing the Pelicans. I don't know why I just blanked and looked at that incorrectly on my screen. That was a total dyslexic moment by me, just looking at my lineups page. So I'm getting to Cade Cunningham then just because I like Cade Cunningham, and I project him. I'm projecting Cade Cunningham for about 36 fantasy points today.
You had a great argument for him. I wasn't gonna slow you down, completely shut you down. We were gonna fix who their opponent was today for sure. And yeah, the Miami injuries, I guess, affect the Pelicans as well. But I think Cade Cunningham, really regardless of matchup right now, is a player I'm going to get to, especially when the ownership is manageable at 19%. I believe this is the last one. It's under 20% on both sites, and the salary is still fine.
Yeah, and by the way, Cade forever. I know that we've got everybody that everybody shows up in the chat and just fade Cade. Let's look at his overall results though, from a fantasy perspective relative to prices in the last 6 games. Let's say 4,000 scores 39 fantasy points, 4,600 25 fantasy points, 5,200 35. 2 crappy games in a row where he had 20 fantasy points at 5,600, 24 5,600. Last game he scored 51 fantasy points at 5,500. Listen, I'm still very bullish on him as a prospect. He's been really inconsistent shooting the ball, but going forward, I certainly think that Cade Cunningham is somebody who ultimately ends up being priced 7 to 8K by the end of the season, and I want to be out ahead of the price. So Cade Cunningham, still somebody I'm getting to. My argument from before, I'm an idiot, whatever, so be it. That's something that'll happen on more than one occasion as we go forward. But what are you doing with Jalen Brunson? Because there's no Luka Doncic in the picture. He's clearly mispriced on FanDuel and DraftKings. But the question becomes, in cash games, once again, no question, you're playing Jalen Brunson in cash games. There's a bunch of guys I'm going to throw out who I'm going to say you must play in cash games. I think that people just figure out the ideal cash lineup as we go along here. But how are you handling Jalen Brunson relative to his ownership right now? The most recent run on DK is projected for 51.9% ownership. On FanDuel, Jalen Brunson projected for 33% ownership. Are those numbers you want to be over or underweight to the field on?
I'll put it this way. I am under the field on it, but he's still my highest owned player in tournaments. It's something where I understand the value completely. I definitely am going to get to him. I could see the ceiling game here. And even, at his middling price, his boom score is really high, top among guards, as we would expect him when he's the top in the optimal lineups. But I just think that we don't have to go there. One thing I do like to do sometimes when we do have a huge slate like this, I like to introduce, when I'm crunching lineups, a little bit more randomness. When I tamper that down, I certainly get more Brunson. I just think that when so much of the field is going to be on it, it's basically a coin flip chance that my opponent is going to be on them, and I don't see it as a have to have it play. I'm probably just going to take a slight stance and go under the field.
Yeah, so I feel differently about him on FanDuel compared to DraftKings.
He's so good on FanDuel.
No, I feel the opposite. I prefer him on DK at 5,700, whereas on FanDuel, he's 6,500. Just relative to the price. And I also want to ask you, are you concerned about the blowout at all? That's something that's weighing on me a little bit in this game, is there's no Luka Doncic for the Mavericks. The spread of this game, 8 points. Frankly, I think it could potentially be a wider spread. I don't know if that's quite wide enough. Like, what happens if Phoenix just runs away with this game against Dallas? Not, I think, a super unlikely scenario without Luka. That's, I think, the biggest concern I have here. Is that anything that's impacting your ownership? Because that's something that did cause me to dial back Brunson and Porzingis a little bit.
Yeah, it did affect it a little bit, because you can just say that there's a wider range of outcomes. So if you simulated this slate over and over again, you would say that the minutes projection would be kind of all over the place for some of these teams. I still think that Porzingis probably gets there in a lot of scenarios. I do think that you see Brunson obviously getting a usage bump, but you could also see Tim Hardaway Jr. having a big game in some circumstances. I think it's possible, that the minutes change with the Phoenix Suns being relatively healthy at this point. And I think that may have affected why I didn't have as much Brunson as the field is expected to have.
Yeah, and once again, it's DraftKings. Actually, I don't have an issue with his ownership around 50% on DK. FanDuel, where he's 6,500. That's where I'm a little bit more concerned about his ownership, just because it's a really expensive price for Jalen Brunson. We saw him start last year a bunch of games in place of Luka, and he performed well, but not somebody who's getting priced all the way up to 6,500. So I think he's a little bit too highly owned on FanDuel. DK, I don't have an issue with that ownership. We do have a couple super chats to get to. Of course, our guy Soldope1234, his usual FanDuel 2v2/3v3 question. So are you ready for 3v3 here, Matt?
All right, let's give it a go.
Okay. So I'm going to read do you have the names in front of you? If not, I'll read slowly so you could just hear them all.
I can pull it up. Here we go.
Okay. So Soldope is asking us, Giannis, Giddey, Cedi Osman. That is one side. Giannis, Josh Giddey, Cedi Osman. Other side, Jalen Green, Jason Tatum, Christian Wood. Now, I'm first of all, the answer to me is the first combination. It is the Giannis, Giddey, Osman side. But second part is only a consideration if Kevin Porter Jr. is ultimately ruled out and confirmed out. I do not expect him to play, but still officially listed as questionable. It's something we're going to need an update on. But for right there, either way, Giannis, Giddey, and Osman for me. Which combination do you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of Christian Wood, which is the only thing that I really see appealing about the second one. But yeah, for me, Giannis is not a priority play, but you know what his ceiling is in any game, and especially a game that maybe the Lakers possibly keep close, and so he actually has to close and be strong at the end. But I still think the first one, I'm getting a ton of Giddy on FanDuel, and Osman getting, I don't know what to think of that team tonight. This is like a total minutes mess. But I still like it, especially like in a tournament situation when there's uncertainty. You can use that to your advantage sometimes, especially with a locked-in player like Giannis.
All right. And another super chat here from Caleb McLean, a Yahoo question. Brogdon or Trae Young straight up. And it's the baller tournament. So 6K entries. So I really do like Malcolm Brogdon today, especially with Chris Duarte out. With that said, I still prefer Trae Young if we're just doing 1v1 between Brogdon and Trae Young. So Trae Young is the answer for me. Do you have a preference between Brogdon and Trae Young?
Trae Young, not close.
Okay. And one more super chat coming in. Guys, thank you very much for the super chats. Very much appreciated. Mark Baptiste is saying, can you play Lillard and McCollum together? Number one, no, I would not play Lillard and McCollum together. I think it's viable for smaller slates. But think about how these guys score their fantasy points. They're both very reliant on the ball being in their hands. There's not going to be a point where these guys are racking up defensive stats. They're not going to be racking up rebounds. Both of them are pretty dependent on points and assists to a smaller extent. So I would not play them together. Another thing, though, about that question, Damian Lillard's questionable to play. We don't know if Dame is going to play or not. He's still dealing with that abdominal injury. It seems like it's been hampering him all season. He missed a game with it the other day. So it still remains to be seen whether he's going to be in or not. But to me, no, I would not play Lillard and McCollum together. And I prefer not to on a smaller slate, especially not on a larger slate. Are you on the same page as me there?
Yep, 100%. The only thing I'll add is that I do like stacking that game, just not Lillard and McCollum together. I think you can have plenty of Bulls and then run it back with a Blazer on the other side, no problem. Love targeting that game.
All right. And now, as long as we're on point guards and Damian Lillard just came up, how are you approaching his injury? Is there anything that you're doing to prep your lineups for the potential that Damian Lillard does not play?
If I am getting to plenty of Damian Lillard as if he's playing, knowing that at the salary, I would have salary saving options. The one thing I would add is that I'm in lineups with Lillard. I'm trying to also get another roster spot so that if I pivot away, I have some optionality where I can get to a lower salary value play. I also have some information about how my earlier games players did. But if in the case that he is out, I want to be able to have at least 2 players in that lineup so I can do some mixing and matching based on how chalky I want to be or don't want to be.
Okay. I think that makes sense. And another thing also I'm going to say is for slates that are, 3-4 games, sometimes I think we kind of have to build our lineups built around the guys who are questionable, just from a standpoint of, hey, there aren't that many guys that are viable on the slate. We want to have access to any kind of pivots or cheap value plays. But for a slate of this size, it's just, we're going to have lineup spots just available no matter what. Because, there's 11 games to choose from. Most likely we have exposure kind of spread out across the slate in different spots. Although actually, now that I think about it, maybe not as much on this slate because there's only 2 late games, and this is one of them. But one of the games is the Dallas game. So I assume that we're all getting a whole bunch of exposure to Dallas anyway. So we're going to be able to make some pivots in the form of Kristaps Porzingis, Jalen Brunson, and maybe pivot those guys onto plays, like Anthony Simons or CJ McCollum, Jusuf Nurkic, if Damian Lillard ultimately gets ruled out. And the main guy to roster without Dame would be CJ McCollum, Nurkic to a lesser extent. Then also have to mention, brought up before, Norman Powell, another guy who's listed as questionable to play. Who are the other guards that you have that are popping up in a lot of your lineups as of now?
Yeah. Also, we can mention Anthony Simons might also get some run over there. In my lineups is tonight, I also have a bunch of LaMelo Ball, which is surprising me because I didn't think I was going to get to a lot of him. Honestly, I'm really spread out at the guard position. I am getting some Shea, some Tyler Herro for sure, and some players like Jimmy Butler who have the dual eligibility as well. I do actually have a little CJ McCollum on FanDuel. Now, going over to DraftKings, yeah, I do have more Ricky Rubio on DraftKings. Again, Tyler Herro. And yeah, I definitely have some Patty Mills as well. And, that game last night, I feel with Brooklyn, you can't even get any more information about the trends in minutes the way that game went, the way their shooting just wasn't working, the way they were getting blown out in the second half. Brown has a huge game. I don't think you can project that again. but Patty Mills is the one that we're seeing get a huge boost in minutes lately. So he's definitely one on my radar in DraftKings.
Okay. I've no real issues there. Anybody else from a guard standpoint, anybody you're really paying up for? It's a position where kind of similar to what we were talking about the other day at guards when you and I were doing the show together, is I ended up paying up for forward a little bit more today. Guys like Kristaps Porzingis, Jimmy Butler making it to my lineups a lot at the point guard position. Generally going a little bit cheaper, or point guard and shooting guard, I should say. When we have guys, like Tyler Herro, Jalen Brunson to get to, Chetty Osman for cheap. I mentioned Cade Cunningham in the mid range. I like getting to him. Karis LeVert actually to a smaller extent with Chris Duarte out. I'm getting some exposure to him. I think there's added bonus of him getting a little extra minutes, ball in his hands a little bit more. Sans Chris Duarte. Is guard a position you're paying up for at much today?
It really isn't. And it's not something that I made a rule for. I guess LaMelo Ball on FanDuel is the alternative choice there. I would say, I do have these players. I have right around double digits James Harden, and I have Trae Young, but they're just not priority plays. And again, similar to the last slate that we covered, yeah, we're going to be paying up for the bigs a lot. Even though, there are definitely some options here. I like the guards on the Bulls for sure. You could definitely play them.
Yeah, any of them in particular? So I had exposure to guys like Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan in the earlier build of my lineups. Ultimately, though, and a lot of this has to do with the Heat news and my added exposure to Tyler Herro and Jimmy Butler, I ultimately just didn't end up getting to them very much. So is there anyone in particular that's standing out to you more between LaVine and DeRozan, or maybe is it Caruso or somebody else?
Yeah, actually, Caruso is my second there, but LaVine is the highest I have on that list. I'm trying to check on. Yeah, that's what it is on FanDuel. I have LaVine and Caruso basically neck and neck in my exposure pool on DraftKings, right around double digits.
Okay. Yeah, I prefer to go elsewhere, but I understand the logic there. A couple more super chats to get to here. And let's see, scrolling back. Here we go. Noah DeCumas. This is the first one we can get to with a string of these to get to. FanDuel GPP, choose one at small forward. Taylor Horton Tucker, Franz Wagner, Tim Hardaway Jr., or Chetty Osman. That is Tim Hardaway Jr. for me, with Luka Doncic out of the picture. But I'll ask you, which of these plays do you like the most, Matt? Taylor Horton Tucker, Franz Wagner, Tim Hardaway Jr., or Chetty Osman?
I really like Taylor Horton Tucker. On FanDuel, I don't have as much of him. I get it. You could fade him because of who he's on the court with, and he's not going to be a high usage player. Sorry, can you say the three one more time?
It was four.
Franz,
it was
not Franz. The other one would be Hardaway. I still don't want so much of this of Chetty. I just don't know what to expect. Kevin Love is back. There's just so much uncertainty there. I just don't like it that much tonight.
So were you also with THT, or were you also with Tim Hardaway Jr. with me, or somebody else?
THT first for me, then Hardaway.
Okay. Next super chat here from Douglas Bowman. Is Gabe Vincent a good tournament play? I understand the logic there, but I'm not getting to him. There are a lot of players out for the Miami Heat, but I think there's better value plays to get to. So Gabe Vincent, not really somebody that's making it into my player pool. Let's see. What do I have for an actual exposure to Gabe Vincent? He is in, and by the way, there's a new update to Fantasy Crunch. You can see the actual percentage point. So yeah, I'm not getting to any lineups of Gabe Vincent. How about you?
I'm not. I mean, I have him decently projected, and compared to his ownership, which is essentially nothing right now, you could play him, especially at the 3,400 on DraftKings. Yeah, you could certainly play him, but it's a large field tournament play, really only for me.
All right, and then another super chat from our guy once again, Soldope1234. This is a FanDuel question: Anthony Edwards or DeMar DeRozan? And then he also said, "Thanks for always helping." So DeRozan versus Edwards, which do you prefer today?
Ooh, let me see where I have it. I have a good amount of Edwards earlier. It's kind of come down lately. I'm going to say Edwards, but by a hair. I really like DeRozan, though. He's played really well of late. Solid minutes. Basically a 35-minute floor with DeRozan. Gosh, I talked myself into it. I think I'm going to say DeRozan here.
It is Anthony Edwards for me. I have more exposure to Edwards. Yeah, I've been really high on Edwards a lot this year, and there's still a situation with the Bulls. I get that Nikola Vucevic is out, but it's still a lot of guys to get touches, and I think DeMar DeRozan is going to see a little bit of dip in efficiency going forward. I don't totally buy into him having this career year at age 32. I think he's going to see a little bit of a step back. He's been great, and I think that's ultimately proven to be a really good free agency signing. I will mention one thing about the Chicago-Portland game. Portland's currently 2.5-point favorites. That should not be the case if Damian Lillard gets ruled out. I will be betting the Bulls in a hurry if Damian Lillard gets ruled out. Arkathelza is asking us about the super chats just rolling in today.
Nice.
Arkathelza, Mitchell Robinson, 3,800 DK single entry GPP. We also have a question in our premium Discord channel, which I was about to get to, just asking, is Mitchell Robinson a viable pivot off of Dwayne Dedmon? So I am not getting to Mitchell Robinson today. Is he somebody who's making it into your player pool?
He's certainly not someone I'm prioritizing. Let me see if he ended up getting in. Yeah, he got into a couple of FanDuel lineups, sub 5% here, but I totally get the play. We have a projected for about 26 minutes, just under that right now, which is a boost from his last 10-minute average. And he's been like a 0.9, 0.8 point per minute guy. So if you think that he possibly gets a little bit more run here, I totally get it, especially at the reduced salary. I think you could do a lot worse than him. It's not someone I'm going to super prioritize, but especially when you're seeing almost no ownership, you could do it.
Yeah, well, I'm not doing it. I understand why it is a consideration because he's cheap, but it's a lot of value plays and somebody who isn't quite making it for me. Our guy Ilya N, his super chat in his ruples, which I believe to be the most viable, valuable currency in all of the world, are the ruples, asking how many more DK fantasy points do you project CJ McCollum for if Damian Lillard's out? Okay, so let's go over and look at some of the on-off court numbers for these guys. And, if you go back to last year, just off the top of my head, there was a massive boost that went to CJ McCollum when Damian Lillard is off the court. But I could right now just tell you exactly what those numbers are, and then I don't have to guess or anything. I could just say what it is. Ballpark, though, or do you have a more specific answer, Matt, as I look it up? How many more fantasy points would you expect from CJ McCollum in a game where Damian Lillard does not play?
I don't have a specific answer, but I would just be boosting my ownership. Even if I didn't even have time to run projections again, I would just be throwing that thumbs up button in Fantasy Cruncher. It would be a significant boost.
Yeah. All right.
So Maui as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So at least so far. Now I'm going to look back to last year as well, just so we get the larger sample size of information. So here are the numbers just overall for the Portland Trailblazers when you take Damian Lillard off the court. Number one fantasy producer on the team, going back to this year and last year, Damian Lillard off the court. It is Jusuf Nurkic scoring 1.22 fantasy points per minute. Then you got CJ McCollum at 1.17. So realistically, and considering this to be a slightly negative matchup for CJ McCollum, if we were to give him, say, 38 minutes, so I'd have him low 40s fantasy points. I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of like 42, 43 fantasy points for CJ McCollum. Just eyeballing it, that's about where I'd have him in this matchup.
Yep, that's solid back of the napkin projection. Obviously, we would get those projections on Awesemo.com immediately updated, so you guys would see what our tools have for McCollum as well.
All right. One other guard that I think we have to bring up before moving forward, and that is Ricky Rubio. He's going to be a very popular play on today's slate. Has recently moved into the starting lineup for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the Cavaliers now, just reading off the list of injuries, a team that I was really high on just a few days ago. I still like them overall. I love Evan Mobley, but all of a sudden everybody's out. We've got Colin Sexton, knee injury. He's going to be out for an extended period of time. Jared Allen is now out. Evan Mobley, he sprained his elbow the other day. He was out. And I don't know if you watched the game, but he hurts his elbow early in the game, taking jump shots and just not going forward. They're going nowhere near the basket. He was really struggling with his elbow. So we've all got all these guys out now. That's also the reason why we're getting questions about Cedi Osman as a viable value play. He's making it into my lineups for sure, even with Kevin Love back. Kevin Love going to be playing on a minutes restriction. But I still like getting Ricky Rubio here. And I've not been super high on Ricky Rubio lately, but I kind of feel like I have to be today just because there are so many players out for the Cavs. But where do you stand with Rubio?
I totally agree. On DraftKings, I believe he is my third highest owned player in my latest crunch here, and he's in the top 10 of my highest owned players on FanDuel as well. Yeah, it's the rare certainty in a totally uncertain mess for the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is like a longer injury list than they have roster. So to pretend like we know something more than the field does, I think is a falsity. And I think our projections are as solid as they can get. But Rubio is the one that I can feel really good about getting over 31, 32 minutes here. On a point per minute play, he's actually been really, really solid at the guard position, especially compared to his modest salary on FanDuel. He's the 24th guard, actually the same. He's 24th among guards in salary, and his projections inside the top 20 on both sites. So I see it as a really solid play here. I see no reason to get away. I also understand the ownership is creeping up here. But at the same time, like you kind of said, with so much uncertainty with the bigs, the only thing I feel kind of certain about is Rubio getting usage and Rubio getting minutes.
Yeah, and we do have a super chat here that's tied into Ricky Rubio as we're talking about him. Ruben Mitchell is asking us Rubio or Brunson for a last man in a FanDuel single entry lineup. So I have really similar projection for Rubio and Jalen Brunson today. However, on FanDuel, Jalen Brunson projected for over 30% ownership, right around 25% ownership for Rubio. Give me the slate ownership discount on Rubio when I have the two projected similarly. So Rubio is my answer there. Do you feel differently? Rubio versus Brunson, who do you prefer?
Yeah, I would just go with the lower owned player, especially since I was going to ask, what's the rest of your lineup look like there? Because if you're going to have one or really either of those chalky players, you better have enough contrarian options in that other spot. But I guess I'll just go Rubio here.
All right. Before we move over to the forward position, I have to bring something to everybody's attention. That's we've got a deal going on right here. If you are not aware, college basketball is underway, and we've got great college football and college basketball tools, all stuff that's run by Matt Gajewski over at Awesemo.com. And I don't know anything about college basketball. I don't know anything about college football, but I've had some success playing DFS on DK in particular with some of the projections that Matt has put out, and that's without knowing anything myself. And if you want to get access to all of our college basketball DFS projections for the first week, you get them for just $5 using the promo code Coach K. Coach K is in the coach of Duke Blue Devils. That's all one word, all capital letters. Coach K.
Extremely disciplined Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything about college. Listen, I don't know anything about college basketball. I don't even get the references. I just know that I go use Matt Gajewski's projections. Helps me win some money, and it'll help you if you use that promo code Coach K. Get the access to them for just $5 for the first week of the season. Coach K, that is the promo code. So go check that out if you guys are looking to get into the college DFS basketball space. All right, let's move on over to the forwards now, and just starting with. We've already talked about guys like Jimmy Butler, mentioned Cedi Osman before. I really like Butler. I really like Osman. I guess general sense, are you getting to Jimmy Butler at a good clip now with all these guys that are out for Miami?
Yeah, he's my fourth highest owned forward. And remember, we said that we were kind of going with value options, kind of mixing and matching the value, some of the obvious value plays that we've talked a lot about. But that means we're moving up at the salary position for the bigs, for forwards especially. I have actually more Giannis than I expected on FanDuel, but I also have a lot of Jimmy Butler here. I guess Tyler Herro has both the guard and the forward eligibility. There are some centers that I'll wait to talk about here, but yeah, I'm checking over on DraftKings now. I definitely have a lot of Anthony Edwards, and I know we talked about him as a solid play. I have some DeMar DeRozan, which it sounds like I'm a little more bullish on that situation than you are. And I'm getting to Baisley as well, Butler, a little bit of Jayshawn Tate, and then some more bigs that we'll talk about when we talk about centers.
Okay, yeah. So for me, Jimmy Butler is actually my most rostered forward right now, and it's just where else is the usage going for this team? No Bam Adebayo in the mix, no Kyle Lowry. It's hard to look at the on-off court numbers because Kyle Lowry's been so new to Miami Heat this year. Also, Kyle Lowry's missed time. Jimmy Butler's missed time. So there's just not that much to go off of. So a lot of it is just common sense thinking here where it's, okay, I'm assuming a lot of the usage goes to Jimmy Butler. I don't have the data to back it up, but it just stands to reason based on the guys who are out for the Miami Heat. So I'm projecting Jimmy Butler extremely well. other forwards that I'm getting to a lot of, and once again, just a lot of chalk plays, but I think it's sensible for this slate. I don't have an issue playing a lot of the chalk. Cedi Osman, Chimezie Metu, Kristaps Porzingis. Of those group of popular plays tonight, are there any of them that you dislike?
I don't dislike. What was it? Metu, Cedi Osman. I guess the one I don't have as much as you is Cedi Osman. I still feel like I don't know enough about the Bigs situation there, and I just have more uncertainty in my minutes projection there compared to Porzingis, who I know is going to get a usage bump with Luka out, and I'm getting to a lot of Metu. I think he's in a really solid spot as well.
So, I mean, we could talk about the Cleveland one for a second, because I'm giving a lot of minutes to Cedi Osman, just from a standpoint of like, where, if not him, who do you think the minutes are going to? That's kind of what trips me up. I know somebody brought up Taco Fall in the chat earlier. That's a no-go for me. But I think Taco Fall is going to be in the rotation, just really a sign of how thin Cleveland is in the front court right now, with no Jared Allen, with no Evan Mobley in the picture. If you're uncertain about Cedi Osman, Kevin Love, he's on a minutes restriction, only expect to play about 20 minutes. So where do you think the minutes are going to if it's not going to be Cedi?
I get it. And, you know, Okoro's going to play. Dean Wade's going to play. I think you get Denzel Valentine in your lineups. I don't think Taco's going to get a huge amount of minutes here. So definitely not there for me. But I just, again, it's not that I have none here. It's just not that I'm going to be over the field there. I'm just kind of mixing out one of each. Or excuse me, I'm just having one of those players in my lineup. So I created a rule for that and essentially made Cedi not get into as many lineups.
So then are you getting to any of those guys like Dean Wade or Denzel Valentine as pivot plays just because you're unsure about Chedi's minutes, or are you just kind of looking elsewhere?
I do have some Denzel Valentine. I am slightly over the field there. Just looking at what I have at my latest run for Cedi. It's not like I don't have him. Yeah, but I am under the field. I have like half what the field is projected to have him in really both sites here.
By the way, we just got a starting lineup for the very good timing by the Cleveland Cavaliers. How do they know that we're talking about them as they put out the starting lineup? They're starting Ed Davis and Ricky Rubio today. So the starting lineup. So the starting lineup right now for them, and let me pull up the tweet from News God so I can read off the full starting lineup. Want to make sure that I'm not putting somebody in who isn't in or making a mistake here. But here, where's the starting lineup? I know I just saw it somewhere. All right, so either Ed Davis. Ed Davis and Ricky Rubio starting. But I'm going to ask you now: is Ed Davis going to be a viable play? We're just talking about where else could the big man minutes go to? Now all of a sudden, Ed Davis is unexpectedly starting, and I'm going to pull up. He was somebody I was not considering at all. Let me look at what some of his per minute rates are.
Yeah, I got to look
up
his stats. I really did not have him projected for a lot at all here.
I didn't even have him in the rotation. So he has played. Here are the minutes that Ed Davis has played. Since October 29th, he's played a total of 3.7 minutes. How many fantasy points do you think he scored in that time?
0.
-1. He has 2 turnovers and no other stats. So you were close. You overestimated the impact of Ed Davis just a little bit there. I'm gonna like Cedi Osman less now. I'm gonna have to go in, update the Cavs, what I'm expecting from them. As for Ed Davis, not that I'm going to be getting to him a ton, but he's in play for me. He's min price and he's starting. He's not a bad points per minute fantasy producer for his career. Also, another note: Kevin Porter Jr. not expected to play tonight, which we talked about before. That was the most likely outcome. But last year he played 13 minutes per game, scored 11.82 fantasy points. Year before 10.8, 8.35. I think something like a 0.9 fantasy points per minute guy for Ed Davis. If we could expect somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 minutes or something from him, then we're looking at like 20 fantasy points. It puts him in play. And once again, that's going to hurt Cedi Osman for me because that's just somebody else in the front court to get minutes.
Yep, I'm seeing it the same exact way. Did not see this coming at all, but he's clearly a value play now. He's clearly a value option. Now, isn't it fun figuring this all out and getting to crunch new lineups 20 minutes before lock? So fun.
All right, so let's see where I get to Cedi Osman. Now, this is gonna make Cedi much less valuable to play to me. And then other guys, this doesn't impact Rubio, doesn't impact Garland. Guys like Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro, if you were considering them, it doesn't massively impact them. But once again, it's another guy we have to introduce to the rotation, and that hurts the minutes upside of some of these other guys. So rerunning my lineups, and it looks like, I'm getting to a lot less of Cedi Osman now. Who am I getting to more of that I'm getting to less of Cedi? Let's see. Josh Giddey appears to be popping up a little bit more. Netu now is somebody who I'm getting to a ton at the forward position, just because I think that that's somebody who, pretty easily fits in around that same salary range. So Metu, who's going to be popular anyway, but I'm getting to a little bit less of Porzingis now. I guess that's just because I don't have quite the same amount of salary savings, so that limits my exposure to Porzingis just a tad. But yeah, Cedi Osman now is barely popping up for me. Somebody who was going to be in a ton of my lineups now, barely showing up in my lineups. Are you still going to be playing some of Cedi Osman or not really?
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like maybe I'm overthinking it by redoing my crunches, because I had sort of a middling feeling about him before, and my crunches sort of reflected that. And now I'm sort of involuntarily reacting to the news that I feel like I may have already accounted for in my latest run. I still think it just confirms what I felt like with Rubio and the solid minutes and usage that we have there, and the uncertainty we have essentially everywhere else in that lineup. Could be just a disastrous game. At least I want a player just holding the ball as much as possible.
All right, updating my lineups now and trying to see where everything stands. Are there any forward options who are picking up a little bit less ownership today that are making it into your lineups? Any contrarian plays that stand out to you? And I'm going to refresh this ownership to see if we have anything recent for the Cavs starting lineup. Any low-owned plays you like at forward today?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at it right now. Sorry. 1 second here. As I get it going here, I guess I have a little bit of Harrison Barnes, more than the field on Harrison Barnes.
Same.
I have looking at like sub 10% ownership guys. I'm like a little bit over on Josh Hart. I have more Miles Bridges than I expected to get to. And this is on FanDuel right now. On DraftKings, it's a little bit different.
Got in premium Discord chat right now a message from Bars. He's saying Jeremiah Earl Robinson for the low owned forward win. I don't know how Jeremiah Robinson Earl. It's every show I do. Somebody brings up Jeremiah Robinson Earl.
It's got to be a bit.
It's not. I mean, he's been okay, but I mean, I think that people are making a mistake by rostering him as much as they have, because once again, every single day he's coming up in some respect. And here are the results for Jeremiah Robinson Earl. He has scored a ceiling of 28 fantasy points, which was in his last game. And that was in 25 minutes. A lot of it came in garbage time against the Heat. But that's his ceiling. And for a slate of this size, is somebody who is probably going to score 18 to 24 fantasy points, going to land the optimal lineup? Not to me. Overall for the season, you look at his numbers as a starter. He's made 7 starts now. He averages 20 fantasy points in those starts. He's been cheap. Is that the worst outcome in the world? No, but it's certainly not optimal either. So not somebody I'm getting to. But anyway, back to the question I was asking. Were you able to dig up who the low-owned forwards you're getting to are, if anybody?
Yeah, I'm getting more than the field on Baisley. I'm surprised that Tatum. It's really easy to get over the field on Jason Tatum tonight, so I'm definitely going to go there. Although it's not my favorite 10K plus option. Even Giannis is tough to get to, which means I can get over the field on him right now. I'm looking at 4.6% ownership. I can beat that pretty well. Besides that here, I have Bruce Brown a little bit over the field. Mentioned Josh Hart earlier. And I also mentioned Jayshawn Tate as well. I'm going to have more than the 5.5% projected ownership on DraftKings.
All right. Now we just got another news update. Indiana Pacers, a little bit of an unexpected starter. So we have no Chris Duarte in the mix. Last game, they started Justin Holiday in place of Duarte. Today, Keelan Martin starting in place of Chris Duarte. And Keelan Martin's been a little bit bigger of a piece of the Pacers rotation as of late. And we've seen some good fantasy results from him in the past, also as a starter. He's not yet started this year, but overall his fantasy production, he is playing 14 minutes per game, 12.66 fantasy points. Last year, we saw he didn't start. There was one game where he was chalk, though, and he scored like 35 fantasy points off the bench in that game. So this looks like first start of Keelan Martin's career. overall as a fantasy player this year. Like I said, a little under fantasy point per minute. Last year, he scored a fantasy point per minute, 9 minutes per game, 9.26 fantasy points. How do you feel about Keelan Martin entering the Pacers starting lineup?
I didn't have a lot of him going in. I guess I'm looking at the stats here. If he gets a minutes boost, yeah, from an efficiency standpoint, you could see it. I mean, we've seen the usage percentage be pretty solid. True shooting percentage has been terrible. So that's certainly not something I like to see. But yeah, on a points per minute basis, they've been okay. For projection, they'd have to get a pretty solid minutes boost. I mean, now that they're starting, if they get over, let me see here.
It's the first start of his career.
Yeah, I mean, at his salary, I could see it. It's still not a great play. 4,500 on DraftKings. I could see it though.
No, he's 3,200 on DraftKings.
Oh, what am I looking at then? I
somebody else, KJ Martin maybe. I don't know. I really like Keelan Martin at 3,200 on DK. Over on FanDuel, Keelan Martin is priced at 40. Oh, that you're looking at his FanDuel price at 4,500. So yeah, is FanDuel price at 4,500? That to me is about a fair price. 3,200 on DK, I feel differently about. And there's a couple of things to consider here. Number one, we don't have any data to look back on him in previous starts to know how much he's going to play. However, favorable matchup against the Detroit Pistons, and this news came out 12 minutes before the game started. I don't think he's going to have that much ownership. So I'm doing what I can to try to jam Keelan Martin into lineups just because I think he's going to go wildly underrepresented by the field because of how late this news came out.
Yeah, I buy it. I understand. Sorry, I was running my lineups. I apologize.
No, I had nothing to apologize for. It's fine. Listen, I gave out a team playing the wrong team before. It's something that happens. We're on here. We're trying to reach out. We're trying to answer questions. I'm trying to figure out who won the Cy Young Awards because it's something I have a lot of money on. And, it's a lot of moving pieces here. And we've got super chats to read. One of them here from Aiz Allert, who's asking FanDuel single entry, Josh Hart and Dwayne Dedmon, or Cade Cunningham and Ed Davis. That's going to be Cunningham and Davis for me. I really like Dedmon today, but I don't really like getting to Josh Hart. We've got Brandon Ingram back for the Pelicans. Minutes restriction is off. Josh Hart's price has gone up a little bit. I mean, if there was a piece other than Josh Hart to get, but I like Dedmon so much more than Ed Davis also.
That's how I was feeling about it, is that the Ed Davis drop off, when you're thinking of it as a 2v2, I mean, maybe if you have the rest of your lineup, you can boost it up, because Cade Cunningham might be my favorite individual play from the group of four here, but I still think as a duo, Hart and Dedmon is the winner for me.
Yeah. I feel like Dedmon's going to be like 90% owned in single entry though. So I wouldn't mind getting away from him, but I don't know that Ed Davis is the guy that I really want to stake my claim to. So I'll say the Dedmon combination officially. If there was somebody other than Hart to get to there, then I would say that. But 11 minutes to go into lock, not going to make you rebuild everything right now. And as for the Cy, did Corbin Burns actually win Cy Young? Do we get that news? All right. So I just hit my elbow on something. I had about $40,000 in winnings on Corbin Burns. He just won MVP, Cy Young. So this is, I've been refreshing. I've been refreshing. So by the way, everybody who had to put up with me for the entire year, bitching, everybody complained about how much I talked about Corbin Burns, how much I said I thought he was the best pitcher in baseball. Now it all paid off. I've got people adding me on Twitter, adding it in also. So, all right, there we go.
Wow.
Now it's going to be, I don't even, I could
do it. Get off the show, pop some champagne. What are we doing here?
Nah, we got to finish this. Not only are we going to finish the show, we've got 10 minutes left in the show. We're sticking around after the show is over because we've got PrizePicks to talk about. PrizePicks, the presenting sponsor of the show. Also, if you guys want to make money on PrizePicks, you sign up using the promo code Awesome, get a $100 bonus on your first deposit. Good way to start building your bankroll. And then also, we've got really good tools over on Awesemo.com that you could help to make some PrizePicks prop plays. You can look at our Awesemo props over at oddshopper.com, which also something that Matt's talked about before. Those are our projections. So even if you aren't somebody who bets on sports, you go look at our prop bets and you can kind of get a sense for who are we projecting well on any individual slate. So lots of reasons to go over to Oddshopper. Also could help you over at PrizePicks. So use that promo code Awesemo, get a $100 bonus on your first deposit. And I'm just thinking about Corbin Burns right now. I'm pretty stoked about that. But All right. Also, I'm getting a whole bunch of texts about this too from my friends and my brother upstairs. DMs on Twitter. Everybody's lit. But all right, forwards.
Much deserved, dude. Well,
yeah, forwards. Anything else at the forward position that we've not hit on?
Forward. How dare you make me switch?
We can talk about center if we've already covered everything.
I feel like a lot of them we can get to. The only one I would say is that on DraftKings, I was surprised to see in my latest crunch how much Jason Tatum I got. I don't love the game situation, but I do think that I was surprised to see how little the field is getting to him. So if you can get over him, I think that's a pretty solid call on DraftKings, even though 10-2 is pretty high.
All right. And then also for people asking about Corbin Burns, the first bet I had him was 40-1. And then I was betting him throughout the season as well. So I'll post some screenshots when we get off this show at 7:30. But once again, Matt Savoke and I sticking around to talk about PrizePicks for 30 minutes. But also, just because it's a PrizePicks show doesn't mean we're not going to be talking about FanDuel. We'll still be talking about FanDuel and DraftKings, because if anything happens, crazy starting lineups or any sort of situation where Damian Lillard gets scratched or anything, that we're going to be covering that as well and talking you through how that's going to be changing our lineups. And I just realized also the Corbin Burns news came out and I realized I forgot to upload my lineups that I had just built over to DK and FanDuel. So I should really get on that. That's kind of important news with 7 minutes to go into lock. But centers. All right, let's head over to the centers. Which centers are you getting the most exposure to today?
I'm getting on FanDuel. I'm getting a lot of Christian Wood. I'm going to be playing Christian Wood. I know that there is heavy expected ownership, and I'm actually slightly under the field, but it's not something I'm taking a huge stand on. I'm going to be right around the field there. I'm also getting into Julius Randle on FanDuel as well. Al Horford with Robert Williams out in Boston. I think you could definitely see a huge boost for him. Obviously, we talked about Dedmon, solid point per minute play. If you increase those minutes projections, which we do, he looks good there. And I'm getting to a little bit of AD. Not a huge amount there. I'm just turning it over on the center side here. I'm getting some Baisley, Rashawn Holmes, not that much J-Val. And yeah, besides that, it's just a whole bunch of people at like 8% or below.
So I want to ask you about Dedmon, because I'm playing him, you're playing Dedmon, the field is playing Dedmon, everybody's playing Dedmon in cash, absolute must play in cash games. But I think now what we have as a relevant talking point for Dwayne Dedmon is relative to his ownership. Are you currently over or underweight to the field on him?
Yeah, I think I'm actually a little bit underweight. Let me check one more time here. Yep, I'm under the field. In tournament play, I'm going to be under the field on him. Obviously, there are ways that he gets to a ceiling, but I'm not even close. I'm not even close in my tournament rosters right now to getting Dwayne Dedmon in there. I get it. You could go there. Like if you just look at sometimes the projection grade and value grade is on Awesemo.com is as simple as you can get, and it's the best way to go. He has an A value grade and a B projection grade. You can play him in any lineup. You just have to be contrarian in other ways. I've just kind of chosen to go elsewhere and be contrarian that way in tournaments.
Yeah, so for me, I feel differently about him, FanDuel, and DraftKings. DK, he's fitting into the majority of my lineups. I'm overweight to the field on. We also have multiple spots to fit him in both the center and the utility spot. FanDuel, where he's going to be, let's see, the last run of ownership, we had him at like 60%. Let's see if that's changed. He was also way more popular on FanDuel than DK. DK last run. All right, so now he's up to 50% on DK. He's 70% on FanDuel. 70% to me on 11-game slate is not a difficult number to get underweight to the field. It's still my most rostered center for FanDuel purposes, but 70%, I mean, get to 60% of Dedmon, you're 10% less than the field. So he's the best center play in my opinion, but still less exposure to the field for me at that 70% number. So that's kind of where I stand in regards to him. My favorite contrarian center option, and let me also just check to make sure that he's actually contrarian in the most recent update, is sub 20%. So not totally contrarian, but I'm overweight to the field on him, is DeAndre Ayton, who I think that people are just kind of sleeping on him a little bit. He's my second most rostered center today behind Dwayne Dedmon, and Ayton only $6,200 over on DK. On FanDuel, the price point for DeAndre Ayton, he is at Let's see. I hate how when I sort it, the first player that comes up is Alfred Payton. When I type the name in, it's like, no, I know those are the letters I put in. 7,800 on FanDuel, but project for less than 1% ownership on FanDuel, an easy number to get overweight to. So Ayton, the $6,200 price point on DK. But here's his recent results. And also keep in mind how good Ayton was in the playoffs last year. But he's scored 53, 40, 34, and 39 fantasy points in his last 4 games. He's just crazy underpriced relative to what he did last year. He finished last season in the playoffs. This is a guy who was priced in the mid 8K range. So it's a misprice. DeAndre Ayton, I think if he wasn't recently injured, I think the field would be rostering this guy like 30, 40%. So I want to buy low on Ayton. He's my favorite center play that's picking up less than 20% ownership. Where do you stand with Ayton?
I'm feeling like I'm needing to rerun all of a sudden with 3 minutes left to lock, because I kind of completely agree with you. He's fundamentally mispriced. If you include what, also we saw him come right back in the lineup and get a huge amount of usage, huge amount of minutes. So they clearly have the same goals for him, regardless of that contract situation going forward for Ayton. So yeah, we've seen him be a great value play, especially at this salary. So I think you're going to see his salary go way, way up in the coming weeks. Why don't you ride that wave and play him tonight? I totally get it. I wasn't going away from him. He just wasn't a priority that I was boosting up.
Yeah. And it's so also talking about the price point, because you said the salary is going to go way up. And once again, we could just look at the historical. This is about the same Suns team that we had last year. And Ayton was a guy who finished the year priced at around 8K. So easy enough to think that it's somebody who's way underpriced. Only a couple minutes to go here until lock. Any other center plays here that, actually, we got some super chats that I want to.
Let's grab those super chats before lock. Yeah.
All right. DK single entry. Keelan Martin and Cade Cunningham, or Jalen Green and THT. That is Keelan Martin and Cade Cunningham for me. Next super chat is from Darren Unger. FanDuel, Mills, Porzingis, Herro, or Edwards, Horford, Giddy. That is the Mills, Porzingis, Herro combination for me. And I hope that
Edwards.
Oh, really? I just find Tyler Herro really difficult to get away from today.
I guess it depends on where you're going. Yeah, Herro's a great projection. I just have a lot of Edwards. I really like it.
So for me, I have more exposure to Herro than I have to any of Edwards, Horford, and Giddy. And then same for Porzingis. And then Horford is not somebody I'm getting to today, really.
Okay. I guess that's where we differentiate ourselves a little bit. Horford's actually my 4th highest owned center on FanDuel.
Okay. So we could talk a little bit about Al Horford. I know there's no Robert Williams in the mix, so there's certainly some sensibility there to Al Horford, but walk me through, is there anything else about Al Horford that you really like there? And then obviously the big thing is just that there's no Robert Williams. Is there anything beyond that?
It really isn't an overthink here on a point per minute basis. If you just boost the minutes, then Al Horford looks like a solid play here. Again, I don't think that he's going to be a game-changing option. I don't have way over the field. And I just think that it's pretty easy here to project him for getting much larger minutes with Williams out.
Okay. Yeah. And to me, it's I don't have him projected poorly. I just have him projected about fairly. And he's really popular. So there's other places I prefer to go to. That's basically the crux of it. So we are heading into lock right now. We're heading into the PrizePicks portion of the show. So we'll bring up PrizePicks in a second. Matt, pull up PrizePicks on your computer. If you guys are, and by the way, everybody asking about Damian Lillard, he's still questionable to play. And the reason you guys should be sticking around for these next 30 minutes, even if you don't play on PrizePicks, is because we could get the Damian Lillard news. Damian Lillard questionable, could get ruled out, and Matt and I are going to be reacting to any news that comes across the table as it happens. But also, PrizePicks. Sign up right now if you haven't done so already. Use the promo code Awesemo and you get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. Super chat for Miami Mike, who always comes in and is always repping his Miami guys, always living up to Miami Mike name. Just giving us a super chat and saying, for all of the Herro haters, and I don't think there's going to be too many Herro haters today. I think a lot of us are playing him in Tyler Herro, the prohibitive favorite to win 6th man of the year right now. So PrizePicks, let's get into that. Pulling up PrizePicks. Do you have PrizePicks open right now, Matt, or not quite yet?
I do. I just pulled it up here.
Okay. So let me go also to the Awesemo player props tool. If you guys head on over to, we have the player props tool at Awesemo, but even more importantly, head on over to Odd Shopper at Awesemo, where you could sort everything by expected ROI, the best ROI bets on the board. You could sort them by expected win rate. For the purpose of PrizePicks, I like to use Odd Shopper and sort by expected win rate as opposed to expected ROI. The reason being is that on PrizePicks, there's no vig on these numbers. It's just, do you hit the over, the under? It's not like sports books where some of them are plus money. Some of them are like minus 150 or something like that on bets. We only have to care, is it going to win or is it going to lose? So I'm just going to sort by the expected win rate. And then we could find which players have some of the best expected win rates. And let's also try to talk about some of the DFS chalk and how they look over on PrizePicks. And maybe then we could try to find some good looking stuff there. Do they have any Miami players up on PrizePicks right now?
Let's see here. We got nope, searching for Dedmon off the board, searching for Butler. They have Butler's points here. Let's see how that looks compared to our tool. We have been projected for approximately 24.62 points, and it looks like his line is at 22.5. That looks pretty solid, more than a coin flip. Just under 60% of the time he's getting, actually, we have this line that's compared to 23.5. So it looks even nicer. Actually, that looks like it could be a solid over bet here.
Yeah. And what'd you say that I'm looking at Odd Shopper? What'd you say the PrizePicks number is? I'm looking at my projections now too.
22.5.
Oh yeah. I love the over on that. That is way too low. Just look at all of the players who are out today for the Miami Heat, and outside of Tyler Herro and Jimmy Butler, who's taking shots for them today? Right? Is Udonis Haslem rising from the grave and taking shots? Even Miami Mike, who loves his Miami Heat, he knows that it's just going to be. He knows it's the reason he left the super chat for Tyler Herro. He knows it's Tyler Herro. It's Jimmy Butler night for DFS. It's probably going to be Dwayne Dedmon night, but he's not a guy who's going to go out and be and taking a ton of shots using a bunch of usage. So Jimmy Butler for sure, somebody who stands out to me. Yeah,
well, you mentioned Tyler Herro. Tyler Herro is pretty much right at that same spot, or exactly at that same spot, 22.5 on PrizePicks. Now, that one's a little tighter for me, but at the expected win rate on 22.5 for Tyler Herro looks like it's 57% as well. That's right around the line. I'm going to press go when our player props tool says that. So I think you could probably make a really good argument that over for Tyler Herro makes a lot of sense here too.
Yeah, Tyler Herro, let's see. So I have Jimmy Butler around 27 points, Tyler Herro around 26. So yeah, these are all numbers that I think look really good. I don't know that the shots that these guys are going to have to be taking is really getting accounted for here, because these are significant injuries for the Miami Heat. And then let's also look over at the fantasy point score, and let's see if they have them over for fantasy points. By the way, if you guys want to use the tools at Awesemo to find the fantasy points, it's the same as the FanDuel scoring. So that's the easiest way. You could just compare it. And Jimmy Butler, listen to this. 41 fantasy points, the over-under. That is egregiously low. Jimmy Butler over 41 all day. Tyler Herro, 36. That's a little bit more reasonable, slightly leaning towards the over. But Jimmy Butler over 41. You agree with me? That's a no-brainer.
Absolute no-brainer. We don't have to argue that at all, especially with Bam out. It's easy.
Yeah, easy for sure. And by the way, also you guys could combine some of the basketball props with props from all different sites, and some stuff that, I mean, if you're into CSGO, like how efficient could the CSGO lines be? I'm going to click on CSGO. Look, this guy Pawn alone, is he going to kill over under 20.5 people? I don't know, but somebody out there probably has a good way of finding out how many people Modem is going to kill. Over under 33.5 kills for Modem. You could, where else could you parlay fantasy points for NBA players with kills for CSGO players? By the way, super chat here for John Good. SGA or Chris Paul as the last man in on DK?
Ooh, SGA for me. SGA, but I totally understand. Paul has a ceiling in this game for sure.
Let's see, Paul or SGA. That's SGA for me. I have SGA projected a little bit higher there. Surprisingly good year for the Oklahoma City Thunder so far. Not that they're a playoff team or anything like that, but they're competitive, and I think that's something a lot of people didn't expect them to be. SGA is great. They're getting really good production out of Josh Giddey right out of the gate. So SGA for me, I was a little concerned at the beginning of the year, just are the Thunder going to get trounced in so many games that it makes it hard for SGA to contribute from a fantasy perspective, but No, he's gone out there and the team's been competitive enough that it's been okay. So thanks for the super chat, John Good, but that is SGA for me. And by the way, another question related to some of the same game here. Iron Maiden in our Discord chat, he also has a question with Josh Giddey in it. He said Gidley, but I assume he means Josh Giddey here. Dennis Schroeder and Josh Giddey, or Tyler Herro and Darius Baisley. That is Herro and Baisley for me.
Looking it up now. Yeah, it's about like a 2 to 3 point difference for me.
Okay. Yeah, it's so you were on the same side as me though, Herro and Baisley?
Yep, we're in agreement.
Okay. Yeah, so we are in lockstep there. A question here from Jets World: is Jalen Green cash viable on FanDuel now that Kevin Porter Jr. has been ruled out? That is a no for me. I really like Jalen Green's athleticism, his upside as a prospect. I think there's reason to think he has a little more added fantasy potential today with Kevin Porter Jr. out, but for cash games, no thank you. He's been so inconsistent this year. He's really hard to trust in the cash setting.
Not a great basketball player right now. I totally understand it for DFS and tournaments because we know the minutes are there. They're going to let him work out the kinks, but you can't trust him in that situation in cash.
All right, we've got some. Let's also look at. We'll get back to PrizePicks in a second, but I'm pulling up some of the ownership right here and want to see what we're getting from some of the players where the game has already started. I'll go to the $4 on DraftKings and just see of the players that have started. One thing I'm seeing already here that I really like: Keelan Martin, 4% owned today. Let's go. That's, I think, a differentiation play. If Keelan Martin was named a starter 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, 6 o'clock Eastern time, I'm telling you, he would have been 20 to 30% owned. But we're getting that ownership discount on just because the news broke so late. It was like 12 minutes before lock, if I remember correctly, that he was ruled in. So that he was named the starter. So Keelan Martin, that's the first thing that really stands out to me. How much Keelan Martin did you ultimately end up getting to? Did you play on DK, FanDuel, or both, or just one today?
I played on DK and FanDuel. Let me see. I didn't get 0. Just looking it up right now.
I have Keelan. Where did I finish with Keelan Martin? I ended up. Go ahead.
I got like 3% of him on DraftKings.
All right, I have 30% Keelan Martin, so I'm rooting hard for Keelan Martin. So let's go Keelan Martin. Also, another super chat from our guy Miami Mike 305 following up. Appreciate you and the crew as always. 305. Thank you, Mike. And hey, we're all Miami Heat fans today. We're going to be rooting for Jimmy Butler, Dwayne Dedmon, Tyler Herro. So everybody a Miami Heat fan in here. And also got Dave DeRemer. He's saying he took a stand, got to 25% Keelan Martin. I hope Keelan Martin plays well because that looks like that is going to be the biggest differentiator for me. We just got a starting lineup for the Milwaukee Bucks: Drew Holiday, Grayson Allen, Chris Middleton, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Bobby Portis. So Chris Middleton making his return from COVID and is going to be in the starting lineup.
Herter is starting. Herter is in.
Yeah, Herter's in and Bogdanovich is in. I don't really think there's too much to see there from the just with everybody in. There's a lot of depth there. It's not something that's super appealing to me. Are you getting to any of those Hawks guys or anything you're really changing there?
I'm not really changing anything. There are just enough spots where I'm getting away from it in a 11 game slate. Let me just check what I have of Herter. Yeah, I mean, I guess I have over the field, but again, he was at 3%, so it's not like I'm taking a huge stand by getting 6% over there. I have a little bit more of him over on DraftKings, actually.
Okay. Any particular reason why more DraftKings than I'm just not high on the Hawks situation from a standpoint of he was oddly left out of the rotation, Kevin Herter, and just like a timeline on Kevin Herter, breakout player for the Hawks in the playoffs last year, signs a massive contract extension in the offseason, $75 million, if I have the number correct off the top of my head. If I'm not correct, I'm in the ballpark. It was $75 million. Season opens, he's barely in the rotation. And I think it's just a crowded spot where it's kind of hard to find the minutes for Herter. And everybody's healthy now, other than DeAndre Hunter. He's still out. But I mean, we have Cam Reddish. He missed time. He's out. I mean, he's in. He's back. So there's Cam Reddish, Delon Wright, Lou Williams getting some minutes, Danilo Gallinari, Kevin Herter, Bogdanovich. That in addition to the guys who actually matter on the team, like Trae Young, Clint Capella, John Collins. I don't think there's enough minutes and usage to go around to really generate much upside in anybody other than Trae Young. So until there's injuries again for Atlanta, I don't think I'm going to be playing very much of them outside of Trae Young. So kind of where I'm at.
I guess it was just real. It was really like on FanDuel, especially, he had the 63rd highest guard price, 47th among our projections. But again, right now, or at least when I ran it for the show in our stats projections, we had him projected for 30 minutes, which I think is pretty bullish. Last 10 games, again, he's been in and out of the lineup because of the hamstring. It's 24 minutes per game the last 10 minutes. That's concerning there. And then, he's like a 0.7 point per minute player. So he's got to get hot. He's got to shoot well. I think in tournaments, it's a viable play. And it's not like I have so much of him. I just happen to have over the field.
Yeah. I mean, I see the reason for it. Just to me, there was a lot of plays on the slate. I ultimately found that I could go elsewhere. Starting lineup for the Boston Celtics: Dennis Schroeder, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Grant Williams starting in place of Robert Williams. So same last names in the lineup, but just one little change. Grant in place of Robert, and then Al Horford at center. Really as expected. Nothing drastically different there. Robert Williams, I love him as a young player. A little concerned about his health going forward. He's had lots of issues. One, getting up in time for practice, hence the nickname Time Lord. And then number two, just staying healthy. Current questionable players that we're still waiting on: Damian Lillard, questionable to play. Norman Powell, questionable to play. Those are going to be the real two big ones. Javonte Green, lesser of an impact, but Norman Powell and Damian Lillard, there could be a whole bunch of value that opens up on Portland Trailblazers later in the day. All right, let's head back on over to PrizePicks, Matt. And why don't you head over to OddsShopper and tell me what some of the top overall props are on OddsShopper. I'm going to look up those players on PrizePicks, and we'll see if there's any value that we could suss out of the situations.
All right, cool. So I'm going to head over to OddsShopper, click on Shop NBA, and get in those player props. Is Dwayne Dedmon's points available to us? I don't think it was.
No, not Dedmon, because it's usually more of the like the core starting players. Dedmon wouldn't be in here because it wasn't really known he was starting earlier in the day.
Gotcha. How about Tim Hardaway Jr.? That's looking pretty solid.
That's a good one. Actually, I think we should be looking at really all of the Dallas players. I think we could give a look at with the injury situation of Luka Doncic. Tim Hardaway Jr. over under 16.5 points is his line over at PrizePicks. What do we have in our tools at OddsShopper?
Let me see. I'm looking at Hardaway here. I just had it sorted by expected ROI. That's my typical here. And now I'm going to search for Tim Hardaway so I can pull up all of his. Man, OddsShopper makes this so easy, dude. This is so great. I've just searched his name at the top, got all of his picks, and right now we've got it at an expected ROI of 33% on a what'd you say the line was? Sorry.
16.5 points.
Yeah, we have the under pretty solid there. We have 15.1 projected points for Tim Hardaway.
Yeah, I'm a little different on Hardaway today, and just pulling up the numbers for this team when Doncic is off the court this year. So just I'll pull up the per 36 minute stats. So when Luka's off the court this year, Tim Hardaway Jr. 25.6% usage rate, scores 46.61 DraftKings points per 36 minutes. So in terms of actual points, we're looking at a guy who's scoring in the neighborhood of 20 points per 36 minutes with Luka off the court this year. So I prefer to stay away from that. I understand it's a smaller sample size, but I think a lot of that usage is going to go to Tim Hardaway Jr. and somebody who I thought was a viable pivot off of Jalen Brunson today. Jalen Brunson still being the better value play of the two, but I didn't mind Tim Hardaway Jr. as a pivot. So I'm going to stay away from that just because Luka's out, but I understand.
In Tim Hardaway, 50,000 to 1 for MVP because OddsShopper is
no. We're not betting Tim Hardaway Jr. for MVP.
Why can't we do Kevin Malone? What is it? 10,000 to 1. You always take it.
Because I value my money more than that. Listen, you want to know the easiest way for me to blow my Corbin Burns money that I just made is to bet on Tim Hardaway Jr. to win MVP. And go put.
All right.
Let's see. Right. So what's the? Well, let's see. If I was to put $10,000 on Tim Hardaway Jr. to win MVP, what's the line?
50,000 to 1.
50,000 to 1. All right. So I would win. Oh man, that would be $500 million. That would be half a billion. That now we're talking.
Oh,
I
is
would
it
be
50,000 or 5,000? I think there might be a typo, but either way, we're talking a
no,
lot
no,
of money.
no. Nah,
No, it's not in. If you're just
no,
getting
50 million
millions.
means nothing to me. That's 500, that would, that 500 million, totally different story than 50 million. Who gives a shit about 50 million? That's a different story. No, thank you. I don't want that. Let's go through some of these other Dallas Mavericks players. Jalen Brunson. What do we have projected for him? Because obviously he's the chalk play in DFS that everybody wants to get to. I feel like we might like some overs on Jalen Brunson over on PrizePicks.
Yeah, let's check it out here. Right now, when we get expected ROI, the projected points looks really, really solid. We have it projected for 21.1. I'm seeing a line for the over of 17.5. I think that's a smash. I think that's really easy.
16.5 is the total over on PrizePicks. That is a great number, I think, to get the over on Jalen Brunson for points. Curious, let's see what I have for fantasy score on Jalen Brunson over on PrizePicks. This is weird. So they have a pretty significant fantasy over-under for Jalen Brunson, 33.5 fantasy points. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Why would they have an over-under of 16.5 real-life points, but 33.5 fantasy points? So over-under 16.5 fantasy.
Over on the
yes, slightly, but I feel better about the over for the points than the fantasy points. Would you agree with that at least?
I would too, because he gets there by scoring. I mean, he's gonna touch the ball plenty, and his expected ROI on the over on 6.5 assists on Odd Chopper looks really good too. So he'll score in other ways, but he's got to get there by scoring the basketball. So I totally get the over on the points too.
Yeah, so points there over for me for sure. Let's see what other Dallas Mavericks are in here. How about Porzingis? What kind of Porzingis projections we have in Odd Chopper?
Let's see. Pulling it up. It looks like on Odd Chopper. It looks like for points, we are looking at I think I disagree with our projection here. So under 20.5 points for Kristaps Porzingis right now is one of the higher projected win rates for Porzingis. I think I might go the over there.
So I mean, something else to consider though is he's only over under 18.5 points on PrizePicks.
Okay, so then it would be really tight. That's within a point. We have him projected for 19.3 right now. I guess it might be a stay away.
I have him projected for like 23 points, so pretty easy over for me on Kristaps Porzingis. I think a lot of the usage, by the way, just to read off. So we talked about some of the usage rates for Tim Hardaway Jr. talked about before. For him, 25.6% usage rate with Luka off the court this year. Jalen Brunson, 27.6%. Kristaps Porzingis this year, 30.7% usage rate with Luka Doncic off the court. So to me, that's certainly something I like getting to. Firing up the game right here. We got some people saying that Keelan Martin is going off. We're only a few minutes into the game, but I've got, as you know, and if people weren't watching yesterday, I've got my new setup here. So I've got multiple screens. So I've got League Pass playing in my right. I've got Matt Savoca on my left. I don't want to look at his face at all, especially when he's wearing a hat today. But I'm mostly paying attention to the basketball games over here, which I hadn't yet had playing. Josh Okogie just rolled out. Who cares? That's going to mean nothing. But all right, what are the early stats here? Keelan Martin really is first 4 minutes. Keelan Martin, 2 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block. Let's go, Keelan Martin, making some things happen. There was my favorite low-owned play of the night, so I'm pretty happy about that. Imagine if I bink GPPs on the same day that I get my Corbin Burns bets to, and just everything looking up for me right now based on 4 minutes of DFS action and Keelan Martin as a low-owned play. All right. I'm
seeing Gafford also's got a pretty hot start as well.
We don't care about him. Yeah, we don't care about him. But yeah, so on the negative side, Cade Cunningham. Oh, actually, so people complaining about Cade Cunningham. Whatever, he scored 3 points in 4 minutes. That's not the end of the world. He hit a 3. Is it the best thing in the world? No, not the worst thing in the world either. By the way, inbounding right now, Cade Cunningham. That's the game I have up on my screen right now. It's Pacers, Pistons, there is 7:47 left in the quarter, and Jeremy Grant just missed a jump shot, got the rebound, and put in a layup. So anybody who's watching along, that's where I'm at right now in the Pistons-Pacers game. That's what I have on my second screen. Other games going on, we've got the Wizards up 13-9 on the Hornets. Like you said, Daniel Gafford off to a strong start. Bradley Beal, oddly, has been non-existent this year. I thought that he was rightfully the expected player to lead the league in points per game entering the season, but pretty not loaded Wizards team, but a lot more competent than was expected coming into the year, and the usage has been a little bit more spread out. Other side of that game, pretty solid start for our guy LaMelo Ball. I say our guy LaMelo Ball. I didn't roster LaMelo Ball today, but I just like LaMelo Ball. But 3 points, 2 rebounds, an assist, and a steal for him. He's putting up close to Keelan Martin numbers for him over there. Was Lonzo somebody that you got to at all?
I actually didn't get to a ton of Lonzo. As we talked about, I was prioritizing other Bulls. I have a bunch of DeRozan. I have some Caruso. I realized the output for him was pretty darn bad. But yeah, I'm going there. I thought that game environment looked really solid, but I'm really just mixing one of those in there.
All right, let's get back to prize picks here. We've got. Oh, yeah, go ahead. I was going to
ask you, with the way that the Wizards have gotten out to this hot start, if they keep this up, you just banked a bunch of money on a Cy Young pick. I'm looking at Odd Shopper. Bradley Beal is 15,000 to 1. This is not a typo.
It's almost
gets you $15,000.
So that's not 15. That's not 15,000 to 1.
Sorry, he's plus 15,000. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, I'm not betting Bradley Beal to an MVP. There are some MVP bets that I don't mind for NBA. If I had to take one right now, it would be Giannis and Antetokounmpo. Jokic, I don't think is a bad value. The ones that I'm most scared of as of right now, I think the odds are, I think Steph Curry is the front runner right now because the Warriors are just beating the brakes off everybody. But the odds are too short on Steph Curry right now, in my opinion. Durant has played really well so far this year, but I'm a little concerned if Kyrie Irving gets back into the mix at some point later in the year. What does that do to Kevin Durant's usage? So if I had to bet somebody right now, it would either be Giannis or Jokic, but not something I'm actually putting any of my money on right now. But Steph Curry to me right now is the clear front runner. I just don't love the odds on him. All right, let's head on back to PrizePicks. 7 minutes left once again, guys. If you guys have not signed up to PrizePicks, you could sign up using the promo code Awesemo, get a $100 bonus on your first deposit. And looking at Odd Shopper, Matt, I want you to tell me some other players who project to have some pretty good likelihoods of hitting over-unders on their props, and then we'll compare that to what's up at PrizePicks.
All right, I'm going to pull it up right now. My computer is aching, but...
Hey, we've put that computer to hard work.
We sure have.
These are long shows.
We talked about Jalen Brunson. What about Devin Booker? Devin Booker's assists look really solid, over 4.5. We also have some pretty good props for use of Nurkic, surprisingly. Yeah, a couple good ones for Nurkic. We like the over for his under for his points and the under for his assists. I kind of think there's a possibility, especially if Lillard is out.
Well, if Lillard's out, then I would like the overs.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I was going to say. We could smash the over if we get a quick lineup call here, but the projections don't love it if the lines are the same on PrizePicks.
Yeah, but I think so. The issue with playing, in my opinion, now, and now there's different ways to look at this, but at least the way that I look at some of these is so the way the sports books set up some of the props is it's going to assume there's a chance that Damian Lillard sits. One thing that's really hard with making projections is it's a yes or no situation. There's no thing where it's like, hey, we've got Damian Lillard half playing today. He's either in the projection or he's out of the projection. So sportsbooks set up hedge lines. It's hard to do that with projections. So here's what I like. If Damian Lillard plays, no problem with the unders on Jusuf Nurkic. If Damian Lillard is out, though, I'm going to like the overs for Nurkic. So could there be value in those bets? Yes, but I wouldn't bet them now. I would wait until we get news definitively on whether Damian Lillard's in or out. Does that all follow?
Yeah, I 100% agree. You just got to move quickly because I'm sure it'll change, especially on PrizePicks where they can shift the number dynamically.
Yeah, and although we've seen, they haven't updated the numbers on Porzingis or Brunson yet. Those are still pretty low. So I think there's pretty good, like these numbers will change, but it's usually not too hard to be a little bit faster to the books than some of these players. Something else while we're on the topic of Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum over under 20.5 points. I would have to think that we really like the over on his points if Damian Lillard gets rolled out. Would you agree with that? Over 20.5 points for CJ McCollum if there's no Dame?
I'm looking it up right now. Oh yeah, that's easy. That's an easy one.
Yeah, so
me,
CJ,
not close.
CJ McCollum, 20.5 points. His fantasy score is set at 35.5. So we got a super chat earlier in the day. Can't remember who it is to reference. Somebody asked, it was our guy Ilya. Ilya asked, how many fantasy points would we expect from CJ McCollum if Damian Lillard's out? And I did the quick math on it. I said it was like 42 or 43 fantasy points. 35.5 is the number for fantasy point over under on PrizePicks right now for McCollum. You're going to want to hammer that over if McCollum is ultimately, if Damian Lillard's ruled out, overs on McCollum just across the board. I think that would make a whole lot of sense. All right.
I think you could argue that you could do the over for his fantasy points. I kind of have it right there. What'd you say, 35.5?
Yeah.
I mean, my projections kind of say that you could go over anyway right now.
Let's see. Where do I have him right now? Yeah, actually,
It's obviously smash.
I'm around 36, so it's the slightest of overs. Still, once again, I would just wait to see if Damian Lillard's in or out, because I'd for sure be on the over. Right now, it'd be something, if I had to pick a side, it would be the over, but more of a stay away for me as it currently stands. And let's see, any other key news here that you want to talk about and maybe tie into PrizePicks? If not, we could kind of put a bow on the show.
I think we covered a lot. Yeah, nothing's really coming to mind right now.
Okay, so we've got here's the results of the game so far. By the way, 2 games in play. Whatever's happened in the first half of the first quarter totally decides the fantasy night. The 7 p.m. games, first half of the first quarter. This is where GPPs are won or lost. Nothing else in the slate matters whatsoever. Daniel Gafford, same exact stat line as before. The reason being he's checked out of the game, so he's not been able to accumulate more stats. LaMelo Ball, strong start for him. 6 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. Over in Indiana, Keelan Martin has unfortunately not picked up any more fantasy points since I last read off his line, but still, I'm not going to be complaining about a guy at nearly min price on DraftKings with 2 points, a rebound, and assist, a steal, and a block halfway through the first quarter with no other fantasy points. We're looking at big things so far, potentially for Keelan Martin. On the other side of the game, Detroit Pistons. In 7 minutes, Cade Cunningham, 7 points and a rebound. All right, he's doing okay. Not really lighting the world on fire per se, but he's looking at, 34 to 36 fantasy points right now, which I would be totally cool with that. And I'm curious. So Pacers game coming out of a commercial break. I'm interested to see if they have Keelan Martin still on the court, but I don't know if we're going to get to that by the time the show ends, because there's only a minute left here. Any final thoughts? Who are you rooting for tonight, Matt? Who is going to make or break your lineups?
It's LaMelo Ball. I got some more of him than I expected, and actually, right now it's looking okay right now.
All right,
as you said,
guys.
Only the first half starts.
Yeah, the only thing that the first half of the first quarter, nothing else matters. The only thing that matters in DFS. That's why you want to stack. I wonder how many people actually do the full onslaught stacks of the first game of slate just so they get that early. Like no other reason other than just they want to get that screenshot 5 minutes into the slate. Because it seems to go well for the first 5 minutes, then kind of tails off. But all right, guys, that is going to do it for us. If you've not done so already, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Really appreciate you guys watching. Lots of content coming up tomorrow. Good luck today.
Congrats on Corbin Burns.
Yeah.